Well, hello and welcome. I'm Kate Bates. I'm joined today by Nathan Guerra. We're here for EMEA. And Nathan, it's week 8 of season 2. That means the final week of regular racing. I can barely believe it's come around so quickly.
Yeah, we're out on the greatest London flat out here today. 8 weeks to day 7 in the on the standings. Lots and lots of competition going on. All going toward a playoffs that is happening this weekend at the top end of the racing. Today we're going to be covering the East one as well as the West one and the women's one in order to take a look specifically at who is going to the playoffs and watching the battles that are at the top end of the league as well, and we'll be making our way through the rest of the categories. But it's been quite the battle to get here, and flew on by, that's for sure, Kate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes you can just look at the points and think it hasn't been a super tight race, but actually the play-by-play racing has been incredible. And the step up from season 1 has also blown my mind, just how much talent we're getting through. So we'll take a look at the course when we can. And it's good to note, Nathan, that tonight they're on Greatest London Flat, not Greater London Flat. So they do take a slightly bigger loop out into Surrey. Not the easiest of courses to ride a team's time trial on necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a course profile that gives us a little bit of an idea of the like a horizontal view of it that gives us an idea of the undulations. But there's definitely some punching points on here. The thing about this is a course like this is very difficult because it doesn't actually give you much reprieve. And there aren't any longer downhill sections. The only section that you have that you can get into a separate super tuck, everybody can just carry their speed through and not have to do too much threshold, over under type pedaling, is really going to be the exiting of Surrey Hills. I mean, right there, you get a little bit of a super tuck, and that's about it. Everything else, because of those little punches over and over again throughout the course, it really puts the team in a place where full on threshold efforts, sitting in the wheels the entire time, and then these little sections that drive you to absolutely just hanging on if you have somebody that's a monster on the front end. So very difficult course for sure for a TTT. It is a course though that you can keep together as long as the whole team is at on par level with each other. So there is that advantage with it. Whereas if you have something that has more climbing in it, that can make it a lot more difficult to stay together.
Yeah, that it is spot on because there are some real little biters on the course where if you are absolutely just hanging on, it can certainly tip you over the edge. It's not a particularly romantic event. It's pretty tough physically and mentally. I think in some ways it's a really lovely way to finish out the season for everybody. But maybe not everybody, actually. There'll probably be some riders, Nathan, who are kind of swearing at the WTRL folks for putting this one in on the last day. But hopefully it goes smoothly and we'll be able to see everybody coming in together and playing quite happy families. We'll take a look at the standings when we can as well. And we will head out on course as well to check out how everyone's going. So let's just start here with the men mixed Division 1A. So BZR Sports, Solid Esports, Team Red, they do have a very clear lead here. They're on 136 points. Fusion ECT, 123 points on second. World Elite Zwifters are tied with Cryo RDT on 120 points. DBR RT in 5th. Vision EMEA in 6th. Canyon Development Squad, they're in 7th. The BZR Sports Solid Esports Team Blue in 8th, Wahoo Lacole in 9th, and Foudra EXO in 10th.
Yeah, definitely want to speak also. I mean, obviously BZR have this lockdown, barring anything crazy happening today. It hasn't happened in the past, but they most likely, obviously be coming on through. But WEZ and Cryo RDT both have a chance being a TTT at the end of the season. Team time trials, Kate, they really can be an upset moment if you show up with the right amount of power, the right riders, and throw down with a solid tactic. So, it's not over for Cryo DT and WZ. Fusion are going to have to fight for that spot, that's for sure. At the top of the bees here, DBR Tornadoes, they're walking away with it, but it's going to be Kirchmer, Honeybees in second there. SC Mimer most likely unable to close this down. So I think the Bees have been solidified for the top 2 spots there. Cryogen Zankalin in 4th. It's gonna be Innovation Alien in 5th. SZ Forset 6th, and then Cops in 7th. In 8th, it's going to be SC Heimdall, Evo Vortex, and Colville. Wheelers CC, that's rounding up the top 10 in the Bees.
In my head there, Nathan, I heard Evil Vortex, and I thought that's a cool name. Evo, in fact. All right, let's take a look at Div C. On top there is Belgian Zwift rider Rhinos, 1. Evo Core in 2nd. Vikings Urdusil in 3rd. TFC Mercenaries in 4th. Bishmaster Pro in 5th. Foudre Cognac in 6th. Belgian Zwift riders Rhino in 7th. Crank Up the Dirt, the Dad's Inside Riding trainers there, in 8th. SZ Vale in 9th. The Wolfpack, they are in 10th. This is actually still pretty tight at the top, especially for 2nd. The rider Rhinos have a decent lead, but between 2nd and 4th, there's still quite a close gap there, so they will have to bring that absolute A game tonight.
100%. It's really great to see the battles at the end of the season here. Again, at the top, though, of this league, Kirchmer Bumblebees are walking away with it, and then SC Frey there in 2nd. And Belgian Zwift rider Gorillas 1 in 3rd for the D category here. Herd of Centaurs in 4th. Kirchmer Junior Bees, always cool to see the juniors out there competing. Viking Asgard in 6th, and then it's going to be Z España Castores in 7th. Cryogen Koppenberg in 8th. Giant Camden Holy Rollers in 9th, and Zwift Scotland D2, they're in 10th. Now the Koppenberg, that's a very short, punchy climb, isn't it? It's not like a mountain, if I'm not incorrect.
No, it's a punchy climb, yeah.
It's just
cobbled climb in Belgium.
Yeah, all right. I'm liking that they're throwing in, that they have their own little flavor of climb going on here.
Yeah.
I'm liking that. Let's go ahead and jump on down. We do have, I believe it's going to be Evo out on course in the men's A division here. Rolling along. There's 11K in. We are starting to get some splits in as well. Live data, Kate. We have live data. What is happening?
We get excited by live data, don't we? Disproportionately so, perhaps. It does help not only us but our viewers to understand what's going out on course. So that first time check is at the 8K mark, and then 16, and then 24 for just over 31 overall. We noticed. So we started last night with APAC. For this week, as we always do, they kick off each week's racing, and there were quite a lot of tight splits at that 8K mark as everybody kind of got out on field and settled in. We'll notice that it's pretty fast for 8K, 10 and a half minutes, but those time gaps do really start sorting themselves out around that 16 kilometre mark. So far so good. Very, very tight. Again, look, there's only just a handful of seconds amongst all of them here. So I reckon we've got a bit of a race on our hands tonight, Nathan. They've brought the A game for the final week. A little bit of pride on the line, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think one thing to really be watching out for is going to be what is happening between those top 2 teams that we saw in the standings. They're going to be battling every last second they can possibly pull off here, because at the very top end of this A category, as we said, Fusion ECT are going to be trying to hold on to at least 1 spot ahead of WEZ or Cryo RDT men. I think if WEZ or Cryo RDT men have a solid ride, like take the win, and Fusion end up in 3rd or 4th place, we're going to end up with a situation where Fusion ECT are not going into the playoffs. So at 123 points for 120, 120. It's all on the line here. And then the reality of, as you're saying, some of these other teams showing up and maybe having a better ride out there, been putting some practice in, only having 3 TTTs. Some of these teams might have really upped their game when it comes to the team time trial throughout the entirety of the 8 weeks of the season here. So because of that, we end up with a very different team in the last week versus the first week of racing. Maybe an upset, maybe, the disparity in points not representing in the standings what kind of TTT some of these teams are able to show up with today. So interesting to see how these points start to come on through, as we see Vision EMEA taking down a 10-17 now. Only a 4-second difference, though. All very close, though, Kate, as you were saying. From 10:32 to 10:17, only 8K in. Anything can happen from here on out. I mean, Canyon Dev, Wahoo Lacole, little ways behind, but besides that, I think everyone's still in this race.
Yeah, we saw some really big time gaps just open up in the last split last night. So quite a number of teams were literally tire to tire until even at that 24K split. But when it got to the finish, that had grown by 10 or 12 seconds. So it can really explode. I mean, I guess that's kind of the nuance of a team's time trial, right?
Woo!
Everything can go so smoothly until it doesn't. Oh, 10:03. Look at that. Now that is a smoking time. 10:03 for 8 kilometers. You want to warn them against going out too hard and blowing up, but at the same time, if they don't really put the pedal to the metal from kilometer zero, like you said, there's a lot on the line tonight.
A lot on the line. I mean, a spot in the Premier Division, it's huge. We've got, they're not fighting for a spot in the Premier Division. They're fighting for a spot to take a chance at it for the playoffs this weekend. 14 men's teams. Priority T with the 10:03 on the board at 8K. Definitely are putting they're blowing a horn out there. They're saying, hey, we are here to race. That's for sure. You know, some who are watching the live stream and getting these splits coming on through now at this point are getting a little bit more motivation. Both Priority T as well as it's going to be WEZ0 and Fusion ECT. They're all going to be watching this thinking, okay, time to really ramp it up. At the same time, you don't want to get too overexcited from that, right? You could see that. And as you said, Kate, you can put your heart rate through your heart through your throat at this point and overshoot, like, oh no, and then end up blowing up your entire race because you get a little bit too excited and seeing the early splits.
Yeah, I mean, there is really a scientific thing behind kind of the physiological arousal that you need to be on the start line where you're ready to go, your body's producing a bit of adrenaline, your heart rate is elevated, but it's quite a fine tipping point where you go over the other edge, and that's where you see a bit of a mushroom cloud, and your body goes into too much of a state where you can't then actually control your heart rate, and that adrenaline that's flowing through. And it's a really fine balance. And you don't personally know what that feels like until you tip over the edge. So a lot of these riders will be experienced enough that they do understand that feeling. They will have warmed up properly, but not too much, gotten to the start line with a high heart rate. Because that's the other thing. You can afford in a points race or something to get to the start line, warmed up, pretty ready to go. But also you can settle in a little bit. For a team's time trial, you have to be at limit the minute that you exit that pen. And so it is all about timing and comfort, making sure you're also keeping that within the limits of your teammates. So it's one thing to do it in an individual time trial, in a team time trial. There's a whole art form behind it. I mean, you've been doing these team time trials for an awfully long time, just in the WTRL league, Nathan. I bet you've seen some pretty big explosions with teams at the back end of the race where they started looking really good, but by the end it all got a bit too much.
I have experienced it. So like up front, so we started almost a year ago at this point, I want to say, broadcasting the WTRL TTT on Thursdays, which is what really kicked this off. TTT was not a part of anything with the Zwift Racing League. The Zwift Racing League almost kind of launched off the back of the reality of having a TTT, not just points racing. And, for the first, all the way, I think it was until like September or August, I had not participated, though, in a team time trial yet in the WTRL TTT. And then I got an invite to participate, and I got hooked. I mean, absolutely. I was like, I'm doing this I wasn't actually planning on doing it every week, but I kept on getting an invite to come back, and I was like, this is so much fun, and so much tactic to it, and so much learning. And it really came down to, for me, one of the attractions to it was the similar thing that I get in gaming, where it's like, what could I have done differently in that specific situation to get the best result we possibly could as an individual, but also as a team? And there's a lot of learning processes that go on, that's for sure, when it comes to how to not end up in that situation. It's funny you speak about showing up to the line with the right amount of warm-up, because, I can show up to a scratch race, as you were saying, or a points race, and, 5-minute warm-up, no big deal. I know that I can sit in the pack for the first whatever and get a warm up, and maybe go into red a little bit. I know I can find a place to hide for a little while. That's not what it is at all when it comes to TTT. If I show up without a warm up and too much dinner and whatever, the whole thing just goes out the window. It's immediately you are in the red and
Too
suffering.
much
You feel,
dinner.
yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, it's just, yeah, it ends up being a lot of pain, that's for sure, if you don't warm up correctly. So it's definitely a process getting into this. We do have the 16K splits coming in already. Interesting. Fusion ECT 1020, BZR Solid Sport 1020 as well. I'm gonna go back to these 8Ks really quickly because the race situation we are talking about, it seems to be playing out here, Kate. We've got Priority Team N. They are battling for this spot now.
This is quite remarkable, the speed that they're going. When these splits come through, just take a moment to process this. 10:24 for 8 kilometers. For 16 kilometers, 20 minutes and 10 seconds. That is less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a negative
for that
split.
next 8 kilometers. That is a negative split. That is really hoofing it along. The Doggos are probably not the team that we're even thinking are going to be in the top couple, and certainly based on those first splits. If they can negative split it like that, what on earth are Cryo going to be able to achieve in this? It's pretty impressive, isn't it? I think it's very easy to get into that beautiful rhythm where you start going faster and you get faster and you get faster and you get faster. But then inevitably there will be one rider who starts to buckle, and that is the real danger point. I think that's what we're seeing here a little bit with the Doggos. When they do go onto this part of the course, it is a bit of a danger point because there are a few tiny little ups and downs. But if that coincides from a profile and elevation perspective with the legs starting to hurt, and that is exactly what we're watching, Nathan, those little gaps are starting to open up. It can go very, very easily from 1 or 2 meters where they just need to drift back on to that blowing out to 10, 20 meters, and then it's absolutely all over. So this is where they need to be really careful. And look at that. I mean, isn't it funny? Greatest London flat, and then that profile. It's almost like somebody stuck the wrong profile on there because it is a little bit up and down, not lumpy in terms of long climbs or even Koppenberg style climbs. There's no cobbles out there, but it certainly isn't just pancake flat. The implication of that being that you can't say to everybody, all right, let's sit on 400 watts and keep it pretty consistent, because with those little ups and downs, the power will really fluctuate as well. So they need to be pretty wary of that.
Yeah, and they are just hitting that 19K point. You do see the largest climb well, it's kind of a two-tier climb there. You do see that initial spike flattens out a little bit and then comes up to the highest point on course. They're about to hit the downhill here in just a moment. Now, this is that one section that we were talking about early in the broadcast where they do get an opportunity to get into a super tuck in just a moment. They're going to have another little kick here, and then that ability to get into that negative 3% gradient for any of the viewers that didn't know out there. I'd be surprised if there anybody, some of the new viewers perhaps, though, not knowing that the super tuck is available if you are over 57 kilometers per hour and you have a negative 3% gradient or more. At that point, if you go to 0 watts, your avatar will get into a super tuck and you will be able to carry speed at whatever. You'll actually gain speed on the downhills through that section by going to 0 watts. It's a great way to save up some energy, and especially in a team time trial when you are essentially at limit all the way through. As you can see here, 167 beats per minute. Kaufman coming on through there. You can see pushing toward the front. Highland here, 164. A lot of these right now, I think Young may be having a little bit of a heart rate malfunction here when it comes to the heart rate monitor at 125. I'd be surprised there. But Kaufman now making his way to the front with one final push. I think this is going to be over the top of that high point we were talking about and then into the downhill. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're starting to get into their super tucks here in just a moment. So, but looking at the times coming on in, Kate, we can see. I'm going to try and swap this up to the 18K marker and get an idea of how the times are starting to come in between the riders here. We'll get a little bit of a reset and get an idea of that.
They're blistering times. said it many times in points racing that I'm not a huge fan of the super tuck in terms of it can make your legs feel a little bit dead if you actually do stop pedaling for too long. Often when you try to pedal again, your legs feel a bit rubbish. But I think that in a team's time trial, I would go against that. My own advice on that one, because you literally don't get a single second where you get to back it off at all in any way and give yourself a little bit of a rest. So it can really give you a chance to even drop your heart rate by 5 beats per minute. It can make a big difference. We're about to see our first overtake here, which is always a little bit interesting to see how much etiquette is followed. Nathan, there is a bit of etiquette involved in doing the old overtake in the team's time trial. Mostly the leading team backing it off a little bit, leading as in the ones being overtaken, backing it off to make it clean, and also the team that is doing the catch accelerating a little bit and making sure all those avatars don't get mixed up in each other's draft.
Yeah, it
Nice
does look
theory
like
anyway.
this is one of those teams, Kate, with Ed Laverick, Tim Fulford, Hambleton here, Quentin Millionaires, Ellis is here as well, pro UCI rider. So really, really well respected, well known team in the community. I think this team really well known for their hill climbing ability. Obviously, with Ed Laverick, they're much more of a put them in the mountains. They're going to demolish everyone. Not so much of your rulers types. I think at the same time, the mixture of the team here hasn't been able to show off, from my opinion, the level at which Laverick can ride and a few other riders that are in the team here. But it's really great to see them in the participating out here. Priority Team Men coming through right now with the 1939. Now, if there's any confusion out there right now, this BZR SP SD team, this is the B team, or the blue team, I would say, in and amongst this crowd here. This is not going to be the current leading team. There just happens to be 2 BZR teams in this division. Just as a heads up for anybody that is out there watching, going, wait a second, what's happening with this BZR team? Why are they in the middle of the seating? It's because this is a separate BZR team. The leaders, they'll be the last ones to go out on course, and you can start seeing some of those riders starting to populate here. Fusion ECT is coming in with a 20:01. Priority Team Men 19:39. Okay, I'm seeing a trend here though. I think the front end of the course has a lot of little punching climbs on it, and because of that, the second half of the course might just be a faster 8K.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable actually, to negative split it like that. They really have gotten up to speed. So they've gotten out there. I think 10 minutes for 8K, that's pretty fast. In fact, it's a little bit faster than what we saw in APAC. There is a bit of an advantage when you've been able to watch some of the other teams race. There's certainly an advantage kind of going late in the field, and that's usually within the same field, but they will have been able to look at the splits and the timing from the APAC and get a bit of a feel for how fast that course is. And that can really help with the pacing strategy if they've broken that down and they know exactly which segments they can look to sit at what speeds. Because that's a good way to do it, I think, Nathan, is if you break it down into the first 8K, the next, essentially into quarters. And for each of those, have a bit of an idea of what speed you'll average and a bit of an idea, therefore, of what power you may average. Because sometimes then I think you can take a bit of, take the emotion out of it, but even take the thought and the consciousness out of it, and then just purely focus on the numbers and the wheel in front of you, and almost become a bit of a machine about it in the way that you're approaching it, rather than just hanging on and seeing how fast you can go. It can help with pacing, help you to not overcook it, but also help them get up to those speeds that they need to reach. They're dropping into this super tuck that you were talking about, but they need to be careful to jump out of it quick enough, because it actually doesn't last for very long, these little downhills.
It's a really great point about taking the emotion out of it. Last week we had canceled the broadcast of the WTRL TTT, and I said, "Oh, come check out the tips and tricks on my personal channel." And oh man, you are 100% right. Get robotic about how things are going to work. Don't let too much of the here's what we have to do. Here's how we do it. Here's the science to it, and just make that happen. because I think I had more hand gestures and like, what is happening here? Like I didn't know because it was a new team and I didn't know their tactic. And every team has their own tactic. They have their own way of doing things. And the team I jumped in with, it was an OTR team on the Rivet team, and I usually ride with On Rivet in their evening team. And I jumped in with Blaze, which is or Blur, excuse me, with Blur, who is their platinum league. And I was like, all right, here we go, check it out. And totally different tactic. Like I had no idea what was going on, and because of that, I got super like into the emotions of it. And next thing you know, like all the motivation went out from me because I didn't know what was. Instead of just being robotic, like you were saying, you want some of that passion, you want some of that fire to get pushed into the pedals. You don't want that going into like frustration or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that can demolish a team time trial if things aren't going the way you thought they were supposed to go, Kate.
And it really also is just purely from a physical perspective, it's about regulating all of those chemicals that are flying around in your body and brain. I mean, we've all had that feeling, right, where you're on the start line and maybe your hands are a little bit sweaty or your heart's fluttering a little bit. And you know it's not because you're putting out 400 or 500 watts. It's simply because
Ooh.
your body's kind of priming for the fight or flight reaction. And if you're not careful, even when you're out there and you're working hard, your body kind of goes into that mode, which can be really beneficial, but only for really short periods of time. And you would have also felt it, Nathan, where at the end of something, you feel far more exhausted than you feel you should. That your effort or your power says you actually feel a lot more zonked than what that's put out. And a lot of that is to do with those chemicals and that arousal. Now, we were
That's a
talking about
great point.
etiquette
Real
very
quick, Kate.
quickly before.
Real quick on that point that you made exactly right there. 304 watts for that race I was talking about with you just now. I usually put out 30 more than that, and I felt demolished afterwards. So it's a great, I mean, the science you're speaking to there 100% played out in my feeling after that race action. So, anyways, go ahead though about etiquette. I mean, that was perfect.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, this is a bit of a clusterfuff. This is kind of quite counter. We saw for a second there what we would like. It seems to have neatened out a little bit, but we had a few riders getting lost amongst the other team there, and that can be pretty disruptive to the whole flow of speed.
Yeah, 100%. Now, it does look like the Fusion team though. Or excuse me, is this going to be BRT? No, Danish Bike Riders. Excuse me, all over the place. So DBR here. BRT and Danish Bike Riders is very, very similar kit actually. Both with the orange and black. But all of the Danish flags I saw there obviously making the corrections. So good to see DBR here making a solid effort, getting through the Canyon devs, no problem. Priority T, absolutely flying. Now, I am getting a message coming on through here. They're letting us know that they are watching out here, Nathan. They're definitely keeping their eyes on those splits. And Priority T, they have been showing up to the team time trial on Thursdays and absolutely dominating. So they're in chat. They're letting us know we're keeping an eye on the splits here. And I think they're pretty dang motivated today. And I'd be watching out Fusion ECT. We're going to have to wait and see what kind of time Fusion ECT pull through here. But if they end up at the top spot, if Priority T take this down here today, they are most likely getting into that qualifiers for the weekend. And being so strong on the TTT, they have a good shot, actually. Like, they're right up there with you know, it does come down to a lot of points race, but look who's on their team as well, Kate. I mean, you want to start talking about a narrative throughout here. They got a solid TTT. They got Eddie Uli on their team here. This is danger zone for sure when it comes to being able to get into that Premier Division.
Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely flying out on course. They've got a pretty good team balance in terms of how dynamic the riders are. The challenge then is making sure that they can really push each other to that limits and get the individual strength out of each rider rather than dialing that back at all in a comfort zone. But each of these riders, we've seen them get outside their comfort zone and do some pretty impressive things and throw down some really big numbers, certainly in that points racing. And I think that based on this time that they're putting down so far in these splits, they are in a very, very good rhythm. And they're in the, I mean, they've only got 6 kilometers left to go. So very much in the back end. And I think that we've seen a pretty clear pattern emerge here of what may be happening at the end. They're about to do an overtake here again, Nathan. So At this point, this is where it becomes quite critical to make sure that that is clean. They've done a very good job of riding with the bike choices, simply from an identification point of view. So they're all on different coloured trons, and then one not on a tron, but that makes it quite easy, even doing an overtake, to make sure they can keep their eye on their teammates. Which I like that. I like some kind of organisation. Some of the teams actually put a number before each rider's name. We've seen that happen a fair bit, or different coloured socks, but it is the bikes here. And look at how fast they're moving as a pack. Something I think that gets spoken about a lot is formation, and what they look like in terms of, are they strung out? Are they a little bit of a blob? But when they're moving this quickly, there is no, I think, kind of perfect way that you look at them and think, wow, they're really looking as sleek and fast as they possibly can. At this point, they're pushing so hard that little gaps will start to open up. But so long as they don't go past a wheel or two that we're seeing so far, they are still very much within the draft and pushing them all the way. Huge power numbers, 500 watts, between 4 and 500 most of the time. And then they're swinging off and the next rider is coming through. So let's look at those split times. Oh, under 30 minutes for 24 kilometers.
They're smashing it, Kate. 30 seconds ahead vision at this point. I mean, they are definitely putting their stamp here, saying we want to get into that playoffs here, and it's all on the line right now, and they are putting the power down to do so. And that 500 watts on the front, so it's paying off. And look at let's talk to this bike selection. I'm liking that. So the Tron bike here with the different colors, it really makes it easy to know what wheel you're supposed to be on. If you have a pole order here, it's like yellow. It looks like Cohen here with the pink. Assuming that Eddie is supposed to be on his wheel. Now it depends though with the DS. At this point in the race, your pole order might really start to go out the window at this point, because it's like, well, who's got something left? You got maybe 2-3 poles left before you hit the finish line. And really at this point, it's like whoever has any ounce of energy left, you need to put it on the front end of this race. And we're going to start burning matches. We only have to come across with 4 here. So anybody that's got something left, you can go ahead. You can be the sacrificial lamb and throw down. It does look like Eddie's taking over at the front, 6.7 watts per kilogram now. They're doing 36 kilometers per hour uphill, 4% gradient right now. Wales needs to just hang on. No, it's actually going to be, Weichert. They need to close the separation, because that speed, that is crucial seconds right now. Cohen's going to have to come on through and pull this together, because if Martins continues on, they're going to lose just a little bit of speed here because of that separation. Wales is going to try and give a wheel. You see how this works here? Now Wales is going to go back just a little bit. What he's going to be looking for is within 5 meters, but it continues to go out, and now they actually have to slow down, which is too bad to see that separation there. It was just a little bit too much over that 4% gradient.
A bit of a danger point. Important as well that Martins at the front doesn't just sit up and wait for them to come, because then they will fly right past him, and that completely wipes out any speed that they did have. But these gaps are too big. 7, 8, 9, 10 meters, that is too much. Blowing out a little bit more at the back. A couple of meters, we can deal with that. They're still within the draft and being able to push on. But Martins is going to have to dial this back just a little bit, which he is doing. So it's a good indicator when you look at that power getting into the low 300s and below 300. You know that he's kind of waiting up without actually sitting up, because, again, that isn't going to be of any benefit to them. But it doesn't surprise me to see a few gaps opening up, because they're going so blisteringly fast, Nathan. They have absolutely thrown it all out there. I'm willing to believe that they've got a team manager making a fair bit of noise in the background. I'm thinking like, Commando on those fitness shows. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're like kind of barking at them like, yeah, go, 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 you can do this. I mean, I think that's the reality of what probably goes on in these virtual team cars. Certainly happens in real team cars, that kind of shouting and motivational screaming. Whatever's happening, it seems to be working, because the 5 of them are back together without wiping too much speed off. So I'm going to point this out because it's really impressive to get back together but still going around 50k an hour. There is a real skill and art to that. So often when you see a rider dropped, you see them drop back to 35k an hour to try and regroup. But that stop start just completely wipes out any speed and becomes a massive disadvantage. We didn't see that. They didn't drop too far below that 50k an hour mark in order to regroup. So, how clever is that? I mean, I think that we need to really give the kudos where they're due there. And they're now back, pushing back over that 50k an hour mark. So they will come into the finish with some blistering speed. And overall, I'm just super impressed and blown away by just how fast these guys are riding. We at the beginning of the broadcast, we didn't quite expect times to be this fast because we didn't see this last night in APAC. So I feel like they've come here motivated to get those points and get into those playoffs, as you mentioned, and with a pretty strong pacing strategy because they haven't dropped off too much here. And yeah, it's quite a good show actually for any teams that are wanting to look at how you do a team's time trial. Well, this is a pretty good example.
Now, Wales, this was the rider who brought that all back together for them. He has to get back on terms now. I think that there was a serious match that was burned in order to bring it all back together. They need 4 riders. He's got to jump on. It's only less than a K here at this point, so he's going to make it happen. I think they are going to start ramping up. Now, look at the leaderboard here, though. 29:44, Fusion ECT 30:08. Priority T have done everything that they can. They are a solid 20 plus seconds ahead of their rival. 27, 28 seconds here ahead of their rivalry. But Fusion ECT, the reality is if they take second on the day, they will hold on to their spot. So they needed Fusion ECT to not have a stellar day. It looks like Fusion ECT are going to have an upset to this amazing effort that Cryo has put out here today. We'll have to wait and see, though. It's not said and done yet. Anything can happen still until the racing is done, until they're across the finish line. And this is amazing. I mean, not taking anything away. This is a stellar, most likely win out here today by Cryo RDT. But Fusion have also shown up to race. And look at Nielsen here pulling along, knowing what they saw from Cryo, knowing that they had to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this race. It looks like they may be solidifying themselves into those playoffs here. And this is going to be for the second place overall EMEA 1 here into the playoffs for this weekend. Fusion look to be defending.
Oh, isn't it a tough one? It's not enough for Cryo to win, but they also need Fusion to fault in some way in order to get them over the line. I don't think that that's happening today.
There's only 3
but they're
here.
very close to the finish, Nathan. They're very close. I think they'll be able to get through.
BZR, Blue, Vision. We'll have to see who comes through. I think you're right. But these seconds might matter for some of those teams that are behind still coming on through. We'll have to wait and see if BZR have a good day still. It really comes down, I think, to this BZR red team and how well they end up riding. You know what? I'm just gonna be quiet now. I'm just gonna be quiet because if they just slow down, now and they're like, well, let's just leave.
It was Nielsen who had to really push all the way to the line there. And isn't that kind of a lonely place to be when it does start to split up in that final kilometre or two and you know that it's all hanging on you getting to that line in whatever way you can? That's when I love to see their Twitch feeds or something and love to see just their pain faces. Although, you know, maybe that's a little bit sick that we want to watch that suffering, but you know that it's happening. This is not an event where you can just cruise over the line and say, well, I did okay. Yeah, it really is. Heart rates incredibly high, 181 we're looking at here from Van Alst. So they're pushing it all the way to the line. They do still have 4 riders here, so this is quite a neat display as well. I kind of like, I mean, it's not pleasant for the riders, but I don't mind seeing it split up a little bit in those final couple of kilometres because you know they're pushing it all the way to the line. Sometimes when I see a team go over, Nathan, with 6 riders all there together, I think, have they pushed as hard as they possibly can? Did they have a little bit left in the tank? Or were they a bit conservative? So I think fortune favours the brave. Sometimes it doesn't quite work out exactly as they need it to, but I still applaud that effort being made.
Looking here at Zonglin as they come on through, they actually have the top time currently at the 24K mark. This is going to be the B category within the EMEA E1. as we move our way over to these riders. And Tom Burgess, he's helping us out to get over to the B category. As long as we hold on to the riders, looks like they're going to stick around for us for a little while. So I'm glad to see that. It looks like a solid little kick to the line here coming from Hainian out of Finland, and it's going to be Taylor next one. Innovation Aliens are here as well. They're currently with the 33-14 in fourth place at the last split check. 32-35 and 32-57. Looks like Zonkland really walking away with this out here today.
Yeah, they, again, very fast times and pretty consistent splits. We're seeing this pattern across the divisions now, with the second 8K really being very blistering fast. That third K also being pretty fast like the first one, but it is that final 8K that's doing a fair bit of damage to the teams. But look, these guys are looking pretty neat here. DBR, they are still in a nice straight line formation. These disc wheels, Nathan, arguably the best bikes to use if you have access to them, and some aero helmets. Bit of a wave happening there. That was a nice, polite little gesture as
they went by them.
Yeah.
Is that what happened there? Hey,
I think so. Yeah, that was quite like sporting to see, wasn't it?
BCR Lions was like, "Hey boys, good to see you. Have
Yeah.
a good ride." Liking the wave here. Elback now to the line. It looks like 465 watts. These are no joke. These kind of powers that are being put out here. If anybody has any idea of what it is to produce 465 watts, that's a full-on sprint for some people. Muller now to the line here. It looks like 787 though. And some of these riders are pulling through for like 30 seconds to a minute at those kinds of efforts. Absolutely amazing to watch what kind of efforts that are being put out here, the kind of wattage that riders are throwing down.
Yeah, it's good to see also when they go into the orange and sprint all the way to the line, that they're really making sure they don't just roll over. I like this Swedish kit. I actually think this is one of the better kits in game. It seems very classic. Almost, do you remember the old Garn jersey that used to race at the Tour de France? Magnus Backstead and Stuart O'Grady sported it quite well. It kind of reminds me of that jersey a little bit. It's a bit retro.
It definitely is. It's got a mixture. Not full-on retro, but it definitely has a little bit of a mixture there. This is one of the first kits that actually got into game. SCR, the Swedish Zwift Racers, riders, one of the first big rides. It's right up there with the Aussie Hump Day ride, for sure. And one of the largest teams. Really, really committed. Martin Jortvik leading that out. And then a couple of split-offs. All still SZ, but split-offs into elite teams that are managed by other individuals. But Martin really being the rider and manager who has been the force behind all the organization. SCR also with the weekly Wednesday was a big part of the broadcast schedule for a very long time. So really great to see them still out here hammering away and really have been a mainstay within the community. In with KC now, they're just going to be finishing up here in just a moment. A lot of riders here, as you can see, just rounding out the ride in the B category. Most likely that were the, as we call them, the sacrifices at the end, putting in that last ditch effort before they end up blowing up and letting the 4 or 5 riders get to the line there. We'll see if we can jump in with the C category. The women are in the pens, and we are waiting for them to take off for the EMEA for the women's crowd. We'll be taking a look at the standings here for them in just a moment. Let's take a look and see if we can find any of the C riders out on course and how they are playing out. Let's at least get their splits up on screen while we look and see if we can find a rider to get us into that category.
Well, they're going pretty fast as well. So led by the Vikings up the top there. So 12. I like to look at the first 8K split to just get a bit of a benchmark. And again, very consistently, we're seeing a faster second 8 kilometers between that 8 and 16 K split there. And we call that negative splitting, right? Where they start at one speed and then they just get faster and faster, which is a very efficient way to ride, and also shows that there is some strategy in there as well, that they're not just going out as hard as they can from the gun, which ends up quite messy. So I always love seeing the pits afterwards, after they go over the line and they all just stop dead. You can imagine.
Well, the C category, they're going so fast. I can't
Yeah.
even find the riders. They're going so fast, they're all across the line already. So see if we can find any of the riders out here that haven't gone across the line just yet. The reason why we are ending up in the in those sections of the course here. We're backing with some of the B riders just coming on through for the KC team. They're in that Bumblebee kit, as you can see. But we may be able to find a few of these C category riders to help us get in with the Vikings, Evolution, BZR cycling team as well. Vikings with a solid 35-36. As you can see, TFC Mercenaries as well as Evo Core. Very close race. And I have a feeling that might come right to the line between those top three, Kate.
Yeah, it's pretty tight overall, isn't it? Look at that. I mean, there's less than 9 seconds between them, with 8K still essentially 8K still left, is what those splits show us. And we do know from even the A categories, but also from APAC, that last 8K can really bite. So we've seen some splits with some pretty tight racing, but that has all changed quite dramatically in that final 8 kilometers. So you've got to take these splits with a bit of a grain of salt when you're a racer as well. You know that you are on track to have a good one, but you need to hold it all together. And we saw that quite perfectly with the A's, where some splits started opening up in that final kilometre. Was it enough to affect the overall? I don't necessarily think so, but we'll have to see those results come in and what ended up happening with the overall timing in that final 8. But it's certainly remarkable how fast they're all setting out. Not just the A's, but down to the B's and the C's as well. Some pretty cracking times. I wonder if at the beginning of the season, when you look through those 8 races and you make a bit of a plan, I don't feel as though this would have been one of those courses that they described as being lightning fast and really high powers. I actually feel like you could look at this course and think, oh, it can be a bit more challenging and a bit more technical than at first glance. But actually, I feel like all of these teams are just motoring and powering over the top of any of those little undulations and just coming out with really high average speeds at the end of the day, and quite a dynamic effort from them. So a pretty good way to finish off the season, actually.
Yeah, and the reality of how close all of the times are as well really speaks to the way that this league has been finding a good par for each one of the categories. Really finding that right mixture of riders, through the process that was season 1, finding where people sit amongst the riders, getting the points correctly, getting the upgrades well, and you can really see how close the racing is here, even within the B and the C and the D categories. A lot of times, I really want to speak to the praise there of WTRL in a lot of ways, because of the way that they've organized this to be able to have that kind of racing. So absolutely loving that, and the organization that has brought out that kind of competition, because you wouldn't have that without that kind of organization, without that figuring out exactly where people stand. It isn't just an FTP. Figure out where your FTP stands and then go ahead and jump into that category. It really has to do with where the results are getting people throughout the categories here. And that's why we do have the upgrade process and the way that people get upgraded at the end of the season here. We are jumping in with the Greek Zwifters, actually, making their way around course. This is going to be the D category, as you can see. Samandrikis, it's going to be Dallas here, to Compass, and then Kapolis. I hope I've got those names correct. I did my best with the Greek there. And then they're being followed up by Zwift Scotland and then Kirchmer East Cycling. It does look like we do have in the D category Tornado's Innovation. I think some of these times are actually coming in from the A division. I think they got mixed up a little bit here. So we do have a 26:07, Bumblebees, Junior Bees 26:34. And here we go. Now we're starting to get some updates coming on through for these times on the leaderboard for the Division D. It does look like Kirchmer Bumblebees are leading this one out with the Junior Bees right behind them. Always loving to see the juniors jumping in and out on Zwift and getting their feet wet with some racing.
Yeah, it's so good to start their journey in here, and in the D category is a perfect way to do it, where they can kind of learn not only the art of racing, but also really test their physiology, those FTPs. Like you say, even when choosing a division, it's not about just knowing your numbers, jumping in, and that's it. It also changes a lot over time. So sometimes it's easy to look the athletes up on Zwift Power and have a bit of a guess of where they may be able to perform. But that's them at their best. We have to remember that we're looking at their peak powers when we're looking at that. So it's not necessarily what happens out on course. And I think it is interesting for those junior bees because each race they can be on such a steep trajectory. And so by the end of the season, it often looks like quite a different picture from early on in the season.
Yeah, the learning curve, I think, as you were saying, the juniors jumping out here, Kate, into this virtual world, I think there's a reality of, from being a parent here too, how awesome it is for the connections that they can make with other juniors. We've seen these junior leagues starting to ramp up a little bit, riders and groups starting to get juniors together, racing against each other. And then just being able to, test themselves against a larger population. You don't really have that in a lot of localities. There's just a reality that the sport of cycling in a lot of localities, at least in America here, we don't have a lot of opportunities for that. And this definitely gives an opportunity for, a little bit of a dig, you know what I mean? Get some competition. And it really relates to the generation, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think from a development perspective, there's actually nothing to date that has matched the potential for Zwift to develop some talent. I'm having a little bit of a giggle going on about these messages that are popping up on screen that are actually public chat where they're talking about a broken trainer. But it sounds from the messages like he was letting them know he was in a bit of trouble and they were almost offering some encouraging advice. And he was like, no, actually my trainer is broken. I don't need any motivational platitudes. My legs are fine. It's my trainer. That's a little bit funny. But I love that the supportive teammates jumped straight into, you can do this. You've got this. And he's like, yeah, no.
No, my trainers, there's nothing that can be done at this point. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your encouragement.
Yeah. My Wahoo doesn't need any motivational platitudes. Thank you very much. It's a little bit funny. We do always run the risk of having those tech flats. Geez, isn't that frustrating when that happens? But no more than falling off or having a flat in real life. These are the women in the pens now, just getting ready to go.
What comes to your mind looking at this, Kate? Like, just hungry, ready to go. Yeah. Okay, anticipation, like intense anticipation. Beast mode, Sox Watts, Gamps is there, Canyon Dev, Z Sun. I mean, all the big names within the EMEA here. We've got the battle playing out. Turbo should be in here. I'm looking for some. Yeah, I do see some Turbo kits, and we saw this last week. The Turbo versus Sox Watts for that second place overall. It is definitely a thing. We'll take a look at the standings here in just a moment. The men are finishing, but now we do have the first team heading out on course, it looks like, with it's going to be Watts up, I believe, heading out there. So it's going to be WTRL, going to be the first ones that are going to give it a go.
Until you've actually been in the pens, it is a little bit of a different start environment than you'd imagine. So we just saw all of them there and it didn't look particularly like a team time trial start because everybody was blobbed together there, and then when they do jump out, it is just the individual riders. But they do really need to be on the ball because when that flag drops, look at the heart rates up to nearly 170 within literally the first couple of 100 meters. So there is no time to ride into it. There's no time to get comfortable. It's not like, let's get going, settle in, let's go. It is like, you've got to be ready to go from the minute that flag drops. We have seen, though, that this first 8 kilometers, we'll expect them to go through in around the 11 and a half minute mark. But then the next 8 kilometers after that is actually where it really cranks up and gets pretty fast. So a lot of time to settle in for sure when you're traveling at speeds over 40 toward the 45 kilometer mark here, but they do need to kind of get organized and get into a little bit of a rhythm. I don't know, Nathan. I think that there's a lot of different ways to approach a team's time trial, but far and above, it's the communication factor. And I have seen, especially some of the newer teams riding together with a new combination of riders where they're very formulaic in their approach to it, where they say, okay, 30 seconds each on the front and let's do this at this certain wattage. But the individual riders often, some suit doing 20-second turns, some suit doing 40-second turns or 1-minute turns to keep that power up. So a good team manager will actually delve right deep into that data. They'll get their big whiteboard, their Anna Russell style whiteboard out, and really break down to what each individual rider can do and what they're best suited for those turns at the front, how long that should last, what kind of powers and speed they're looking at. But the one thing that universal across the board is the riders need to get off the front before they slow down. So if it's supposed to do a 30-second turn, if after 20 seconds they're really starting to drop power, that's when they need to get out of the way and make sure that they do keep that momentum up and keep that power consistent before there's any dips.
Yeah, I really have to agree with that 100%, that there's a reality here that whatever is so it's a fine line though too of if you don't know each other really well, and this speaks to how important it is as a team to be a team that understands each other's patterns, that understands each other's abilities. And like any team sport, you jump in to a field and if the forward starts playing defense, you're like, what are you doing? The goalie jumps out and is trying to make an attack. You'd be, why are you out of place, right? And so I think that there is this reality to knowing what the abilities are of each of the riders, when they're going to fade or not fade, and having a DS that can have that oversight and really have an idea of what everybody's doing at each moment, and be dynamic, I think is what you're speaking to. That if you have this set plan that gets a little bit too rigid, you're not going to get the most out of your riders. And so, but if you end up like I did, showing up last week and not knowing any of the riders or what their abilities are, it can mess everything up as well, because you can have just complete confusion. So riding together, knowing a team, practicing together, and knowing how to fill and when to fill amongst them, when it is to take turns, and just kind of how to make a play in the moment. The best teams that are out there in any kind of sport, they're the ones that can do it with their eyes closed. They can know what another player is going to be doing at one moment, in a split second, and that can be the difference between winning or losing when it comes down to a tenth of a second in some of these TTTs.
There's a lot of riders who are very prescriptive when they take instructions. So if you tell them to do a 10-second pull, they will do not 9.5 seconds, not 10.5 seconds. They will do 10 seconds on the dot. And as we sort of talked about earlier, and taking the emotion out of it, they just don't think. They do exactly what they're told, almost as if the race has been programmed in for a bit of autopilot. That can actually be really helpful, especially in the first half, where you don't expect too many people to get dropped in the first half. In that second half, there's a danger of people getting a bit more fatigued. But for the most part, you can predict what is going to happen, even in that first sort of 3 quarters as well. So I would actually say that the strongest and most important member of any team in a team's time trial is actually the director, who can keep everybody calm when everybody starts to really hurt, their heart rates are going up, they're starting to think, oh my gosh, can I keep this going? A really good team manager can keep them very calm and take away all of that doubt and all of that question, and just keep them moving at a really smooth speed. So shout out to all the team directors tonight, because I think they're the ones who have a lot of pressure on them as well.
Yeah, being the team director is probably the most crucial spot, as you were saying, for sure. And they're going to have the teams that have one that is fully committed. That they're a huge part to play. And I always think about that too when I jump into a TTT, and this is a person they're not getting their workout in, right? Like they're committing to the team to give this hour or plus to 2 hours of time plus research in the background. You got to be really committed to the results of that team to show up, and I mean that's a huge responsibility. And then you have 4, 5, 6, 8 riders that are all getting a result based off of the work that person has put in. That's not even out there riding with them and sweating it out, but it's a big effort, and it's probably the most important person when it comes to the team time trial, as you were saying, Kate. Kate, real quickly, let's go ahead and jump in and see the results. We did just finish up the men's race here for the EMEA 1 East 1, Division 1. And we're going to get an idea of how things played out before we head into the splits here for the women. The women for the EMEA have just got out on course. If you're showing up for that, we will be covering this race that we are watching. We did see who just got out on course so far. It is going to be Seastar Race Like a Girl, Sock Swats, Polka Dot Bombs, Canyon Development Squad. They all got the green light and are on course. But let's take a look at how things played out amongst the men here. We need a results feed here first. And here we go. It's going to be Priority Team Men. They did it here, Kate, but it doesn't look like it was quite enough as Fusion. By 30 seconds, too. They dominated the field, but Fusion just showed up today as well.
Well, but isn't that in the cruelest twist of fates there that they did dominate, but Fusion sneaking into second by less than or just over a second ahead of Vision EMEA. So, look, that was a absolutely cracking ride by Cryo. It did look textbook. It looked so neat. They pushed it absolutely all the way to the line. And whopping 5.4 watts per kilo, no less. I think we'll have a few sore legs after that. Fusion coming in second, 30 seconds adrift. Vision also at 30 seconds. BZR Sport Solid Esport Team Blue, they were in fourth, 40 seconds back. The Doggos, they were in fifth, nearly 50 seconds back, and they had a blistering start, but it did bite them a bit toward the back end. The World Elite Zwifters in sixth, DBRRT in seventh, all pretty tight here. The top 9 within 1 minute is very impressive. BZR Sport Solid Esport Team Red in 8th, Wahoo Lacole coming in 9th, just sneaking within that minute mark, and another World Elite Zwifters team they're coming in 10th. But that 5.4 watts per kilo from the Cryo men, that kind of makes my legs hurt just sitting here talking about it, Nathan. That is definitely, I think, the team's time trial of this season. So way to finish it off for them. It may not have gotten them that ultimate result overall, but they can certainly leave the series knowing that they put everything out there, and I'll give them full credit for that.
100%. And amazing job out here. And looking towards season 3, it's not said and done, that's for sure. And it's definitely paying off that they're showing up to the WTRL TTT on Thursdays. That definitely showed up today. Maybe our Tornadoes take it down, though, with a 4.2 watts per kilogram with 41.32. Cryogen Zonkelin there in second. This is going to be the EMEA East 1 Division 1B. Cops coming in for third place. Colville Wheelers CC in fourth. And then it's going to be the Innovation Aliens in fifth. SZ Forset 125 back from the win. SZ Heimdall battled it out with their other sister team here. It's going to be fifth and sixth place. Only 7 seconds between them. Evo Vortex in eighth at 141. Belgian Swift Riders Lions 3 and 9th at 158 back. And SZ Mimer. Lots of SZ teams in this B category. That is your top 10 for the Bs here. And then the Cs.
Let's take a look at the Cs. We've got the Vikings Urdisol. And I really would love if somebody jumps into the chat and tells me exactly how to pronounce that one. It is the fun thing about EMEA, Nathan, is we get some great names thrown at us. They took, this is a tight finish. Less than 2 seconds to the Mercenaries. So cracking race overall and a very efficient ride from the Vikings there too. Evo Core in third. They were just under 5 seconds back. Bishmaster Pro in fourth. Foudre Cognac coming in fifth. Cryogen Issaran in sixth. WTRL Caprica in seventh. The Belgian Swift Rider Rhinos, they were in eighth. The Wolfpack in ninth. SZ, the Swedish Swifters. Vale, they were in 10th. So pretty strong performances again there across the board, Nathan.
And in the D category, the Kirchberg Bumblebees come on through for the win. It's going to be Kirchberg Junior Bees for second. SC Freight in third. Herd of Centaurs in fourth. Belgian Swift Rider Gorillas 1 in fifth. Giant Camden Holy Rollers in sixth. Z España Castores in seventh. It's going to be Greek Dragons in eighth. Swift Scotland D2 in ninth. And then Cryogen Koppenberg coming through for 10th place. That is going to be the results there for the men's East 1 Division 1D. The standings, I believe, are going to be updated here. We're going to be getting an idea of exactly how things ended up playing out. As we do have a few minutes here still before we start getting any splits for the women's race that is out on course now. It does look like BZR Sports Solid Esports Team Red, they are going to be going through, and there's 2 points there RDT almost pulled it off, but they actually would have needed a couple more teams. It wasn't just Vision; they would have needed a couple more teams in between them there.
Yeah, look, really came down to the wire there. And again, full credit to Cryo for absolutely bringing it this week. It wasn't quite enough. Good on to Fusion for holding on there. But that is our top three. BZR and Fusion will go into those playoffs. Cryo will have to come back next season and try again. But based on that performance, I reckon they might be pretty motivated to do so, Nathan. World Elite Zwifters in 4th overall, DBRRT in 5th, Vision EMEA. They had a great ride today, but in 6th overall. BZR Sports Solid Esports Team Blue there in 7th, Wahula Colin 8th, Canyon Development Squad doing a great job there in 9th, and Foodra EXO, reminds me of Gossip Girl XOXO, coming in 10th there.
I actually have no clue what we're talking about there. PBR Tornadoes, this is going to be, I'm just going to do a quick refresh here just to make sure our standings are all updated here for the Bees there, but it is going to be DBR Tornadoes walking away, only 2 points off of a perfect score there. And this will be Crowd Zonklin there at 135, taking down the Krishmer Honeybees, SZ Mimer in 4th, Innovation Alien, SE Vorset, 108. Excuse me, sorry about that. And then Cops here at 106. SZ Heimdall, followed up by Colaville, Wheeler CC, and then Evo Vortex. I think spring is on the way here, Kate, or something.
Did you just swallow a fly?
No. Oh, man. I think the trees are starting to open up a little bit. We'll have to wait and see what's happening outside because I have a feeling we've got some budding happening. All right, so here's the C's, Kate.
Well, it is autumn here in Australia, so we're going the other direction. Belgian Zwift Rider Rhinos, they took the win in the Division C. But look at this tight race overall. So Vikings Urdasil and Evo Core, they tied on 143 points for 2nd and 3rd. TFC Mercenaries in 4th, only a couple of points adrift again. So a very tight top 4. We'll have some movement up in division there, but also a very tight league, I think. Coming into Season 3, Bishmaster Pro taking 5th, Foodra Cognac in 6th, the Belgian Zwift Rider Rhinos in 7th, Crank Up the Dad's Inside Riding Trainers, Crank Up the Dirt there in 8th, Cryogen Isaran in 9th, and the Wolfpack, they rounded out that top 10. Let's take a look at the Ds here. We've got the Kirchmere Bumblebees taking the win quite convincingly over Swedish Zwifters Frey. Belgian Zwift Rider Gorillas coming in 3rd. The Kirchmere Junior Bees, good on them, coming in 4th. The Herd of Centaurs in 5th. Vikings Asgard in 6th. The Zesp, the Spanish Castores there in 7th. Cryogen Koppenberg in 8th, Giant Camden Holy Rollers in 9th, kind of sounds like a roller derby team, and Zwift Scotland rounding out that top 10.
And now back into the women's racing. They're out on course now, and let's take a quick look at how things are starting to play out. We may or may not. Oh, I'm so thankful. I just saw a first split come on through. I was getting a little bit worried for a second that we might not start getting any kind of live data here on the women's race, but it does look like Canyon Development Squad are coming through with a 12:08, currently 22.4 to go. The men's race as well for the West are in the pens as well. You can hear, let's just give you guys a quick little look at that here as we do wait for some more splits to come on through. 12:23 to the start. There's a little bit of chatter coming on through. Skyrocket is hanging out. Casket, well-known rider, actually races the KISS 100 almost every single weekend. They're one of the top teams there to be watching out for. 28 in the pens and 12 minutes to go. Women's racing, though, as is out on course. We are back in with the What's Up WTRL team. No splits for them just as of yet. We'll see if we can find where those have gone. Canyon Dev does have a split coming through. They're only a little ways behind here at this point. And a solid team, all in pink. 7 riders right now. Wong, Udman, it's going to be Hunter, Lytle, and then Simmons. Upton on the chase, it looks like, from the RCC women. I think very quickly closing down any gaps that were there early on. And then Z-Sun here about 45 seconds back from them as we wait for the splits to come in and let us know where things are at amongst these riders.
We're looking at some pretty neat performances thus far in terms of the teams staying together in that first third of the race. So just over 30 kilometres in total. And so those splits we're seeing at the 8, 16, 24 kilometre mark before we're guessing what actually plays out in that final. But this is the part of the course where they really do need to just knuckle down, because this has proven to be the fast part. So that first split around the 12-minute mark is what we saw. That's the only split we've seen come through for the women. But we expect that second 8 kilometres to be done faster than that 12 minutes based on the consistency and the patterning that was happening in that men's division earlier. So this is where you've got to just settle down. That speed is pretty high. All right, now look at these watts coming at these time splits coming through. So 11:43 for Sisu, I Race Like a Girl. They are really starting to see some very fast times. Their Canyon Development, of course, we saw them in the pink. They were looking good at 12:08. So already some fairly solid time gaps opening up amongst these, because to have an already over 20-second gap after 8 kilometres is quite significant, and that can blow out a fair bit in that second half. But let's see, as these other teams start coming across that first 8 kilometre mark, I think we'll see some even faster times.
I want to really quickly here, as we do look at these times come on through, give us an idea of what they mean to the team standings right now. Well, here it is, 136 Project Beast Mode. They have walked away with this season so far, so they will be getting a qualification. But Turbo versus Socks for Watts is still a little bit of a conversation here. It can be a very difficult day for Socks for Watts, but, 5 points is a lot, actually. And Team Turbo, they have a very, very good team time trial. Aoni and RT and BRT Atomic Kittens, they do have good time trials as well. But even with those two teams in between Socks Watts and Turbo, Project Beast Mode would have to have all of the things that would have to happen in order for Socks for Watts to take this down today. It might just be about winning on the day here for Socks for Watts. Now, Socks for Watts, Watt TF, they are definitely a very, very strong team time trial team, though. They do have the ability to win outright out here today. We'll see if they can pull that off. But Turbo, they've recently picked up some riders that can really bring a lot of power to the table here as well. But that's the current team standings. Turbo most likely going to walk away with this still for that spot. 5 points is the difference, and we'll see what ends up playing out here. A lot will have to go wrong for Turbo and a lot right for Socks Watts.
It's always that you say that mathematically it's possible, and you always get called on it when you're commentating and you say, oh, you essentially call the win before it happens. But we have to understand that while it is mathematically possible, a lot has to happen in order for that to happen. And we just saw that in the men. Cryo performed so well in that team's time trial, but it wasn't quite enough. They still didn't end up going through to that playoff. And that's because it's not just about how well they performed, and they have absolutely zero control over what the other teams do. In a points race, you do have a lot of control over the results that the other teams have, just in terms of the way you slant your tactics and even the riders you choose to work with or not work with in any breaks or sprints, etc. In a team's time trial, it's kind of one of the draw cards of the event, I think, Nathan, is that it's so pure. You can really only focus on yourselves. Nobody else can impact what you do. And it's ultimate accountability, right? At the end of the day, if you go well, it's because of what you've done. And there is absolutely no one you can point the finger at if you don't go well, except yourselves as well. And I think that kind of adds to the nervousness as well, because you don't want to let your teammates down. You want to make sure that you play your part to the best of your ability on the day. And that's, I think, what kind of comes into the complexity of the team time trial and trying to get a good performance. A few little gaps opening up here. Zed Sun is who we're looking at on screen. This makes me nervous because you might say, well, we can see them in the bottom of the screen, they're coming back, but that requires quite a lot of effort. If you do drop a wheel and do have to chase back even a little bit there. So Zedson really need to just regroup a bit and make sure that they keep that consistency without any gaps opening up further
I
because
really
they're
like
not even at the halfway mark yet.
I really like how Davies came through and didn't burst to the front with that speed, though. She didn't interrupt, unless she was going to come on through and take over the front end of that pack at that point and drive the pace. But since she was just trying to get back on terms, Davies perfectly slotted in right on that rear wheel, did not pull through, and ended up allowing the rider who was supposed to be leading at that point, whose turn it was, to finish her turn, not cause any confusion after getting back on terms. That's one of the major mistakes that I see in and amongst the team that can cause a lot of confusion is when you do end up off the back, you take a gigantic surge in order to get back in with the riders, and then you don't soft pedal your way back to a wheel. Instead, you take all that speed straight to the front, and it ends up then slowing down, and then the rider's like, well, where am I supposed to be? Who is taking the pull at that point? They end up slowing down with you, and it can completely disrupt everything. So great job by Davies there, keeping her order as correct as it could be as she got back on terms. Great little pro tip there coming on through. Crowds in Stelvio, 11:40. This is quite the battle between BRT atop and Kids and Stelvio. 11:40, 11:40.
Yeah,
3 seconds to Seesaw I Race Like a Girl. Amazing battle happening here. And they're not even in, Seesaw I Race Like a Girl are not in the top the 10 from what I can see. Now they've been completely taken off from what I can see. Or no, they're taken out here down to 7th place actually, but they weren't actually in the top 10 for the series standings. So having an amazing ride. But Sox Watts, as I was saying, one of the top teams, already taken down Project Beast Mode at the 8K mark.
Well, hold on. Now, this is interesting because 5 points, we were talking about the mathematical possibility of Sox for Watts actually catching up to Turbo, but they're winning and Turbo is back in 6th. So this is actually, I mean,
Was
in
not
terms
expecting
of
this
is
at
this
all.
possible? Wowee. They've kind of thrown a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons there. In saying that, I would caution against reading too much into this first time split given how tight it is between 3rd and 6th. There's only 4 seconds happening there. So I think the next split will be a little bit more indicative of that. But I think they're trying to prove us a little bit wrong with our maths there, Nathan, because 1st to 6th, that could actually make up those 5 points.
Looking, I mean, between all of these riders here, if we look Aeonian RT, they're out on course. I believe, is this going to be Aeonian? No, this is going to be the BRT team, actually. This is the Hell Kittens, I believe, that we're looking, or Atomic Kittens, excuse me. 11:40. They're tied currently with the Stelvio, the RDT team that's just ahead of them here. There's going to be some pacing going on between these riders. 11:40, 11:40. They need to stay consistent if they do want to beat Turbo on the day. 1 second difference here between them. If we look back here, this is going to be the this is going to be the Sox Watts team that is fighting for their lives out here, being led out by Rachel Elliott. And Rachel Elliott's going to be so incredibly motivated. She's been wanting to be in that Premier Division from the get-go, I believe, but wanted to take a team that they formed themselves. And that was one of the things early on when it came to the launch of Season 1. Some decisions that needed to be made because a lot of these riders, Kate, had the opportunity to ride for long-standing teams that had in-game kits that they could ride for, or go and be a part of a team that they knew. Go and be a part of a team that they have been a part, that they could form with their own riders, throw it together and say, no, we're going to go and earn our way there. And that is exactly, I think, what is going on here with Sox Watts, Turbo, and a few others that are out here on course right now. And I think that there's a lot of motivation in the legs of these riders right now to earn that spot. But they've, like you said, a lot needs to happen between them. Aeonian, as you can see here, they're another team that with a lot on the line for the day. And how they end up riding on the day here is going to have a huge impact on how things play out for Turbo.
Oh, I like Aeonian. Luce Adagase, she was really exceptional last week at Libby Hill in the after party. But again, today's team time trial is absolutely about how they can all work together, making sure they make the most of the strongest riders and get the most out of them without any gaps opening up. But from a form guide perspective, they look very neat. It looks like they're doing an in real life team's time trial here, or it did until they went 4 wide across the road there. Thanks, ladies. Uh, but it does, they do look very neat, and they are carrying a lot of speed and some fairly consistent powers
Look at the
to keep
fashion
that
here.
speed going.
What is going on? This
Yeah, I'm
is
not sure about that.
no 3 and
It's a
3
little.
though. It has there's something happening with blue, green, blue, green, blue. This is on purpose. I'm telling you,
Oh,
they
you
did
think
this
this is a
color
like a
coordinated. Blue,
numbering
green,
kind of?
blue, green, blue, green. I think this is for the fashion police and also for how they ordered the team at the same time. McDermott
Somebody
here
call
for
Anna
fraud.
Russell. Let her know. Let her know what's going on here. It's not a bad way to do it in terms of rider recognition, and we haven't actually seen it before. And I do keep an eye on all the different strategies that the teams are using in teams time trials to identify each other. So this is something quite new. The idea that a blue rider always follows a green rider, and so on and so forth. It's really good in theory. I think all good theories can go out the window when it comes to teams time trialing. So I'm not sure if that blue green is actually what they were planning. But either way, visually, I think from a fashion perspective, Nathan, it seems to have caught your eye. So if nothing else, they've got a win on that front.
Well, look, Cassie's trying to get in position here for that green. We'll have to wait and see how it ends up playing out, though. You're right. And, come on, ladies, get into the correct order so that this plays out. I don't know what's happening here. It looks like it's falling apart from the color coordination now at this point. But that's because Matthew's on the front at 331 watts, 6.1 watts per kilogram from the Belgian rider, absolutely demolishing her pack a little bit here. Henderson's got to close this down. But that's some extra speed. And these little kicks, if they can bring it back together, it will be helpful. But at the same time, if it hurts the speed, it doesn't look like it's going to, though. Henderson does do her job. Now to the back, it is going to be Matthew. And that is actually well played there by Matthew because it ended up increasing the speed. Maybe that was just well timed by her.
Look at this little gap, though. It's only a small gap at the back, but Matthew has actually, it seems to me like she's done quite a big pull and then needed even a quarter of a second of a breather when she got to the back there. Now she is easily back on, but that forward and backward movement can be a bit taxing on the legs. So she's clearly got pretty good form because she's back on the front again here. But we don't want to see any surging, be it at the front or at the back, in terms of really increasing that pace within a couple of meters rather than doing it over 50 or 100 meters to really build that speed up. What's important, and we touched on it earlier, is that when a rider swings off, they're still going at the fastest speed they possibly can before any fatigue sets in. So regardless of what the plan may be at the beginning of the day, that is the time to get off the front when your legs start burning a bit too much and that speed starts to drop. But they're just approaching now what I reckon, Nathan, is the toughest part of the course at the bottom of the Surrey Hills here. This is where they do have a few kicks up and then also a few chances to have a bit of recovery. But this is where we have seen a few cracks appear in the teams. They are past that halfway mark, that critical halfway mark. We'll start looking at these 16K splits that are coming in and get a bit of an idea. So look at that. Turbo has actually moved up to 5th, which makes an enormous difference overall in terms of that battle for the second place into the playoffs. So we're looking at Turbo and Socks for What's there. Socks for What's riding out of their skin at this point, ahead of Beast Mode, who we know is fairly safely through to that playoffs. And we saw it with the fellas in APAC last night with Beast Mode. They have just picked up a new bike sponsor in Rose, which is quite symbolic, I think, because this is their first season in the community leagues. And I think that they're really positioning themselves well to become a bit of an esports juggernaut. So while we only have one team in each of the leagues here, I think that we might start seeing development squads pop up as well.
Looking through the race here with BRT Atomic Kittens, they are one of the teams right now that are on the that cusp here of upsetting Team Turbo. Only 12 seconds back here at this point. They may have went out a little bit hot. We're going to have to wait and see how this ends up playing out in the second half of the race for them. They're currently 12 seconds back. They are being chased by the polka dot bombs. As far as the times go, it does look like Aeonian, though, are going to make the catch on them. Now, Aeonian RT currently sitting in third place. 2-second difference between them and Cryogen Stelvio for that podium spot on the day. Project Beast Mode, as you did say, they're 22-16. Sox Watts, as I said, they're a team that definitely have just the big power TTT specialists. Maybe not the kind of kicks, though, in the sprints that you would see for the points races, and so suffering in the overall standings for that. We'll see how they can, whether or not luck will be in their favor, and as they go right on through. Wasn't expecting to see that. Suddenly, there they are in picture. Sox Watts, as I was saying, just the monsters that they are in the TTT continue to just annihilate teams. And I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of teams come together here actually on this climb, as this is going to be the section where the biggest disparity can be seen between the teams and their ability levels is on the climb. So a lot of catches may be made here, and we're going to see how well the etiquette is as Sox Watts pull their way through both Aeonian and probably in just a moment here the Atomic Kittens.
I really like Sox for Watts and what they're doing today. Rachel Elliott, you touched on it earlier, talking about how they've actually chosen to bring this squad up rather than just going and riding for bigger teams as individuals. And honestly, Nathan, that warms my grinchy little heart to think about this journey that these ladies are on, and that they may be able to step up. I'm not sure that it will necessarily happen this season, but I think they are on the improve, and they certainly are on the trajectory to get there, if not this season, perhaps in season 3. Rachel Elliott, she's after what she did on the Volcano with that solo breakaway effort when they did 3 whole lot of lava laps. She's got to be the standout ride of the entire season across all the geographies. That one particular day, it just impressed me so much. The tenacity that she showed. She's such a diesel engine. She's taking a bit of recovery sitting on the back here, but they are absolutely very lucky to have that engine of hers. And they are a very complimentary team as well. So Cassie Baldy, she was fabulous last week on Libby Hill. Each of their individual riders we could single out and say what a huge asset they are to any team. But the fact that they can, all 4 of them or 6 of them, they're down. Are they down to 4 now or 5? They've just got one of their riders. Who's that in the black at the back, Nathan? Let's take a look at who that is.
It's going to be Hart riding in the black
she missed
kit.
an hour on the kit today, but for the most part, each of the individual riders, they are very impressive standout on their own. But more impressive than that is the fact that they can come together and ride such smooth transitions in their TTT, and also really high speeds.
Yeah, that's going to be Luis Hart riding for the Sox Watts team, level 23 Zwifter. I believe this is a recent pickup from what I'm seeing, actually. 247 estimated FTP. And being a level 23 in and amongst these riders, I mean, that's a pretty elite crowd that Hart's riding with here, actually. So with the black kit in game here, I have a feeling maybe just a little bit of a maybe a mix-up or not a quick change over to the Sox Watts kit. Maybe didn't get the code for how to open up the kit, actually. There is a lot of the teams do have secret codes that only they have in order to get the kit opened up in game. So Sox Watts perhaps with the quick pickup of Louise Hart got her into the team here, level 23, and showing her worth here, 5.8 watts per kilogram right now at 330. Great pickup. That's one of the highest watts per kilogram I've seen from a rider, actually, in this race so far. Now, Hart, giving us a little bit of TV time. Maybe this is the last-ditch effort for her, or just letting us know that she belongs, even though at level 23.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whether this is an audition for something more or why she's been brought in today, she's certainly doing a pretty impressive job to keep up and show her worth. You're right. That's a pretty tough section through the underground there, because you actually have to accelerate. She's done a good job of that. You have to accelerate onto the bottom of that climb. Otherwise, it does bite. It is biting her a little bit, that massive effort. But this is where she just needs to grovel back on a little bit because she'll get a lot more recovery if she can just bridge back up there, which it does look like she's going to do. That gap is closing now, 8 meters, 7 meters. If she can get within a couple more, I think she will get that draft and get that recovery. But it's a pretty formidable squad that she's jumped in with, and to be holding her own, this might be a name to highlight for the next season, Nathan. One of those names that kind of comes out toward the back end that you think is definitely one to watch.
Definitely, I'm loving this. Now, Laura Starmer here making her way to the front now here. Solid effort, 307 watts. Going to take a pull through as things did slow down just a tad, waiting for Hart to get back on turns, back up to 45 kilometers per hour. There's another rider here to be on the watch out for. Starmer here, also a level 23. So going to be a newer pickup, most likely at that level. Did start Zwifting, it looks like, back in May of 2020. So right when we weren't really allowed to go race anything outdoors. Most likely gonna shoot a guess at the dartboard here and say maybe a bullseye on COVID being part of the reason. And now it looks like loving it and in amongst one of the top teams trying to fight for a spot in that Premier Division. Great to see. As Starmer now backs off a little bit and Rachel Elliott back to the front, 285 watts. Consistency is the name of the game. 45 kilometers per hour at 32 minutes in here as we do see those splits. As far as the splits go, though, Kate, it does look like still steady here at that 22:03. We haven't had an update in a little while here, so going to maybe head on over to the B category in just a moment as we wait for some more splits at that 24K to get an idea of how things stand. Because Turbo, that's going to be the question. Where are they at? We can click around a little bit to get an idea. Thorvaldsen, 1.3. Organization, where is it at? They have dropped here at Madsen. There's only 4 left. Oh, this could be it. And, they're such good friends, too. That's one of the things that you like. They are competitors on course and great friends off. And seeing Thorvaldsen battle with McKay and Kaling, I mean, this is pretty awesome to watch. Good as well. They all know each other. They've ridden on composite teams together, Sox Watts and Turbo, a lot of these Turbo ladies here. So this is quite there's a lot of passion and heart up against each other. At the same time, I know afterwards there are going to be a lot of congratulations, regardless of what happens. But wow, heart-wrenching to watch right now.
Yeah, talk about camaraderie and a little bit of competitive nature coming out. That's definitely what we've seen from these ladies. The 4 of these riders absolutely hold their own in any bunch. When you put them all together, if they can harness that, it can certainly go a long way to producing a pretty big ride. But it does take quite a lot of cohesion. And, let's be real. It just takes everybody to be on a pretty good day in order to ride pretty smoothly. Sometimes, even if you are the absolute best of the best, but you turn up and it's not necessarily your best day on the bike, then that can be totally rubbish and completely throw out the team dynamic and what they plan for. Let's take a look at these split times because they've started coming through en masse for that 24K split. We are waiting for Socks for Watts, WTF, to see. They have been the leaders on the road so far to see where they're at. But so far, it does look like Cryogen Stelvio have gone through in that 33-minute mark. So they were one of the early ones off. 11:25 was that time from Socks for Watts. Canyon Development Squad, they're down there on the list as well. So we're still waiting for Beast Mode to come through as well. We'll update that when we can. But in the meantime, we are seeing this pattern continue where that second 8 kilometers is the fastest split along the way. That next 8 kilometers is looking like it's starting to burn a little bit more. And it does kind of paint a bit of a picture of what might be happening then in that final 8K split, Nathan, that they are all really starting to hurt and having to really push through and just hold on to try and get across the line with 4 riders.
Yeah, I really wanted to highlight that there is 4 riders here, which is going to be tough. Having dropped off here at Madsen at this point, they start with, I'm looking through here for the Turbo. We'll get their split in just a moment. I have a feeling they started with 5, unless Noack was with them. No, that was not. That's a Beast Mode rider. So I believe they started with 5 on the day. Sox Watts started with a little bit of advantage, I think, even out here today, starting with more riders too. So tough one. Looking at beast mode here, they are keeping a solid gap. Did beast mode actually make they did not they actually made a catch of turbo, so they are flying in comparison out here today. They are a solid 41 seconds up from what we can see on screen right now. That 11 seconds plus the 30s difference between the two teams. So beast mode, they definitely are having a good day out here, and it's showing why they are the top team. Marb here, Miller, it's gonna be Shallow, and then Kumer all pulling on through in their lovely orange kits. So we love orange
Where's Anna
around
Russell
here.
when we
Where
need
is
her?
Anna Russell when we need her? Let us know what she thinks about the orange here. Hey, pulls through. Interesting to see now. This is a little bit of a mistake. Did you see as Hog went through there? Humor now having to pull through at 5.2. That did slow things down just a tad for a moment. Those are those moments of frustrations at time when you're trying to get organized. It does look like Shalu is going to come through at 6.1. That's for a pull, I would assume. Yeah, 5.2 watts per kilogram, almost 300 watts right now at 39 kilometers per hour. Getting back into some organization. You can see why these little undulations can cause a little bit of mayhem amongst the riders here as they try to punch through each one of those sections. It can overstep or understep and cause these gaps here. So getting things reorganized, it looks like beast mode.
It's really about keeping it smooth, isn't it? Because dropping that pace just a little bit and then having to crank it through and speed it up, it does a lot of damage to the legs and also doesn't result in the highest speed possible. But Beast Mode have been pretty consistent all season, actually, and I would think that leading into the playoffs, they're in pretty good form. Remembering, of course, that the playoffs include a points race and a team's time trial that will play out over 2 days. So that's on Friday and Saturday for these athletes. It's a pretty big ask, that back-to-back performance. This is a bit of a chance for them to smooth out the edges in terms of tactics and performance for these team time trials. So even though they do look to be going through to that playoffs with relative ease, we also need to consider that this is kind of their last option to streamline anything, to maybe try anything in terms of a different tactic. That might be who spends what amount of time on the front and through what sections. They can probably afford to be a little bit creative with trying different things out there, or conversely, they also have the opportunity to kind of reinforce the good work and tactics that have been done so far. So we're looking at Aeonian now. We spoke about earlier just the fact that they're a very strong group of individual riders, and can they pull that all together? Fascinated still. We're still not seeing that blue-green happen, Nathan. I mean, I like to think you were right about that, but it's not playing out visually quite like we may have expected.
I want to speak to this. So, how many places? I think they need one more place, Sox for Watts. I mean, it's really to the line here. I mean, if we look at the reality of it, Turbo 128. They just need to hold on at this point. Look at these time splits. 5th place to 1st place. Is it going to be tied on the day? I'm gonna have to wait and see. I'm gonna have to wait and see across the line here. Still, though, BRT Atomic Kittens. They do have more riders still, I believe, BRT Atomic Kittens in their group. No, BRT Atomic Kittens, excuse me, they're down to 4 here at this point, actually. 4v4 out on course for Turbo. And the reason why this is important, and I'm highlighting this, is because the Atomic Kittens, in this last few K, they could be the upset here. It's a huge gap, though, at this point. 14 seconds. That's a lot to bring back. Thorvaldsen is on fire at the front here. Colleen continues the Italian rider continues to push 4.4, 4.5 watts per kilogram at the front. We get back in. Rodriguez was dropped, so losing that rider is a big deal. We look at the differences here. Johnson here at this point, 4.8 watts per kilogram from the Atomic Kittens right now, trying to match. Can they bring back any time is going to be the question, because I know we're not talking about first place right now, because Sox Watts look to be walking away with this one, barring any kind of big upset when it comes to beast mode, maybe taking them down. But the reality of BRT and Aeonian versus Turbo is whether or not Turbo makes it into the playoffs now.
Ooh, it's coming down to the wire. When we discussed earlier on that it could mathematically be possible, but it wasn't probable, Well, we either underestimated Socks for Watts or overestimated the amount of competition on the day from all of those teams that are now sitting in between. But they will have to push all the way to the line because there's a lot on the line here, and Socks for Watts are putting in an absolutely tremendous performance. They are belting along speed-wise, and they're looking very smooth. Rachel Elliott is certainly the time trialist amongst them that we expect to put in a huge performance. We're looking at the Aero Unicorns here, the Socks for Watts. So that's that familiar kit. Rachel Elliott, look at her. She's the one we know is a bit of a diesel engine. But again, kudos to Hart, Nathan, because she's not only just hanging in there, but she's actually throwing down some pretty strong turns still.
Yeah, Hart, amazing. Starmer as well. Really great to see these two additions to the team taking on the course right now. But now it's going to be at the front. Rachel Elliott here for the final little kick. 5.4 watts per kilogram into that 1% uphill gradient for the final 300 meters. So they aren't going to catch Seesaw Race Like a Girl. They're going to be able to hold them off. Definitely catching them on time on the day, but not going to have any kind of overtake. Cassie Baldy now in that 7. Sargent leading things out. Everybody up and out of the saddles, most likely, for the final kick to the line. Aeonian, they were caught on the day, but their time will matter for the overalls. We'll see what kind of placing that they can hold on to as they're making their way to the line now. With McDermott here coming out of Ireland. Matthew is there as well, the Belgian rider that we were talking about, taking some solid pulls, and looks like she's going to come through and lead her riders across the line at 6.1 watts per kilogram or so. Keep on moving our way back here through some of the riders, as this is going to be Rodriguez. She was dropped by her team. I believe Tom McKinn's maybe already across the line. Tom McKinn's just coming across the line, as you can see here with Gamps. This is the time that's going to matter for Turbo. Be on the watch out for that. 44:01:05 now, as you can see. Beast mode now with the 42:07 currently. Almost a full minute faster, perhaps, there than their competitors. They have opened up another 6 seconds here, so it does look like it's not going out too fast, because after they passed Turbo through going along the River Thames there, they actually were only at about 10 seconds. So it's only been about 6 seconds more that Beast Mode have been able to pull over the top of Turbo since that pass was made. So Turbo, I think, have ramped it up in the second half of this race.
Well, and they needed to, didn't they? Because if they do even end up tying on points overall, it would be Socks for Watts that would go through by virtue of the higher place finish on this final day and overall finishes. So it'll come down to the wire as Beast Mode crossed the line there. Another solid performance from them. But I think that Turbo may just hang on to this, Nathan. It's been a bit of a tougher day out on course for them than possibly even they foreshadowed at the beginning of the day, but I think they might hang on to be able to go through to that playoff.
Yeah, it's going to be right to the wire, but I think you may be correct out here that they will hold on to that spot. Now, we are in with the men's West 1 here for EMEA as well. We'll be jumping back through the women's B divisions as they do B, C, and D for results and for some of the standings and how they were playing out here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and head on over to the men, though. This is going to be 15K in. This is going to be Navy Cycling at the front end of the race right now. 19 seconds ahead of Foudre. The current standings for this, we'll get that all up on board in just a moment here. For the men, the current live data is not quite through for us as well. So as soon as we get that all in, we'll let you know and give you an idea of where things stand. We can give you a little bit of idea of how things stand, though, across the first starters. It does look like Foudre have made up a little bit of a time gap here over Navy Cycling, and then it is going to be BRT Tornadoes, who I think have been caught by quite a few. We'll get an idea of where the standings are at as well in just a moment. The conversation, though, for this is going to be the Plastic Cockneys versus Team Tour 2000 Callus and Team Experimental Westside are in here as well. But this is kind of one of the more decided divisions, actually. So today it's going to be mainly just about the battle that is happening for the Team Time Trial today. If we do take a quick look here at how things are for the standings, we'll just put it right over. Oh, this is actually not what we were looking for. The team standings. Here we go. Plastic Cockneys, you can see 136, 130. I mean, this Well, I mean, we keep saying it all day long here, and then we get like these upsets. So I'm just gonna hold my word and be like, it's mathematically possible that something could happen, and Team Tour 2000 could take down the overall. Now, those top two teams are going to be going through, unless somebody just doesn't show up on the day or doesn't finish. I mean, the only way Team Experimental's coming through is if Team Tour 2000 or Plastic Cockneys just don't even finish, and Team Experimental win on the day.
Look, stranger things have happened, and I am not prepared to make that call until we see what's happening out on course. But yes, it certainly does look like they are in, what can we say? They're in the hot seat, the Plastic Cockneys, to make that happen for sure. Team Tour 2000 Kalash, yeah, I reckon they might have a pretty good day because there's still a bit of pride on the line to finish the season off well, the ordinary season. But again, a couple more days and we do have those playoffs. So it is Tuesday night there, isn't it, Nathan? Tuesday night. And the playoffs do start on Friday. So last chance for the teams to kind of polish their coffers and see what they can head into that playoffs with. And there'll be a lot of teams tonight who just want to finish on a really good run to be able to hang their boots up for season 2, knowing that they've thrown it all out there. So very much a very competitive teams time trial this evening. Isn't it funny that we keep saying, looks like it's a pretty open and shut race here tonight, and then every time they've proven us wrong. So let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's just see how this plays out as we get some time zones, some time splits through.
Yeah, we are waiting on the time splits here. We are going to make our way through, though, and see if we can find some of the riders out on course. I'm actually starting to get a few of the splits to come on through, so let's go ahead and bring those up as quickly as we possibly can. I am seeing, though, we do have Navy Cycling, Dirt Wolfpack, BRT Tornado, Foods Ray, and a few others with some solid times. We'll get those here in just a moment as need to update a couple of things to make sure that they are good to go. As it looks like moving our way back though through the pack here, see if we can find the Plastic Cockneys and the rest of the top teams here to see how they're going on and how the formations are, how many riders are in there. Bike Straw KTM, as you can see here, as well as the KWCC. One of the tough things is here. The identification. This is going to be London Dynamo with a in-game kit, actually, which is interesting. You see LD. I'm wondering how they pulled that one off. Do you know what London Dynamo is? I'm not sure on this team.
No, I mean, I think Google would be my friend when looking those up, but no, I'm not sure. Kit looks good, though.
100%. Looks really good. Here we go. We do have the times coming on through here. That's going to be a couple of splits, not completely filled in, so I have a feeling our live data might be struggling just a tad. Looks like Martin's going to help us out with londondynamo.co.uk. They even have a Who We Are page, actually, with an About Us. They got women's juniors teams. Huge, 500, let's see here, healthy membership, which charges around 500 members, actually, each year in their cycling club. So they are a gigantic team. Martin's probably rolling his eyes like, you don't know who London Dynamo is, Nathan. It's a huge squad coming out of the UK.
Well, I mean, he is our resident Brit, so he fills us in between. We've got a bit of geographical diversity on our team. Nathan, between yourself and Dave Toll, Anna in New Zealand, me in Australia. Martin, okay, he's in Canada, but, he's a Brit, so he kind of covers a couple of grounds there. I think between us, we can figure out where most of the teams come from and their background. But awesome that these guys have juniors and women and quite a big, strong community. Isn't that quite a consistent thing we're seeing, even with the Swedish Zwifters, the Aussie Hump Day riders? We are seeing a lot of these quite big communities pop up, which is great for the sport. A lot of them are very competitive, but a lot of them are also entering teams across the different divisions just from a participation perspective. But either way, it's pretty good to see that competitiveness come through.
Backstrong KTM here with 2026 right now. Dirt Wolfpack 3, they're 2057. Navy Cycling with a 2104. Not seeing anything from the Plastic Cockneys just as of yet. Maybe a little bit of a struggle on the day, or maybe resting up. As I think I'm gonna take a look at their standings. Do they have enough of a lead? No, they have to show up on the day unless they had like an agreement with, if they like shook hands
Mm-mm.
with Tor Callis and we're like, we don't even got to show up. Let's rest up for the weekend, and just take a break. I mean, they have enough of a lead that they could. Maybe not. Team X West Side probably could take them out actually if they were to do that. So they're most likely out here today. I have a feeling we just don't have live data coming in from them, as we do see KWCC also coming on through. As you can see in the Sigma Sport kit that they're using right now. And they've got a solid time, as we do see the live data. Here we go. Team Italy now with a 2022 coming on through. And then behind them, it is going to be the KTM team still holding down a solid second place. WTRL Skyrocket there, 2043. SCL Boulder there. Very tight racing, all just within about 20 seconds or so of each other there in those top 4 spots there, and then rounding out to 30 or 40 seconds there for 5th and 6th.
Well, it is pretty tight in that top 4, but I would definitely say that Bike Strong KTM have the slightly more impressive splits, negative splits there. They are clawing back a bit. Team Experimental there that we were just chatting about, they've now come in, thrown the hammer down a bit there, nearly under 20 minutes. Isn't that like the magic 20-minute mark for that 16K split? Remarkably fast course. I do think the Plastic Cockneys will be out there on course. We'll see that data come through when we can. Even from a sporting perspective, even if they didn't have to show up to win, you don't get this far in a season and dominating it to then just not race because you're saving yourself. Like, I don't think that would be a very sporting thing to do. And we expect a bit more from them because they have been such a great team thus far. So let's just wait until that data does drip on through. But in the meantime, look at these watts that are getting thrown down. Very high heart rates here as well. But this course has proven to be a lot faster than I think we gave it credit for.
Yeah, very, and especially this back end of the course here. I do think the splits are, I think up front, I was going to speak to this a little bit earlier when the ladies were first starting, and you see them getting going, the difficulty to get the speed up high because of how many little bumps. And they do go through that section a second time when they go through the the PRL start finish banner. Actually, there's these little bumps as they come along the river there that just continue to eat away at the speed. It's very difficult to keep a consistent effort all the way through because it does get up to 3, 4, 5% gradients even at time, and then they leave to head on over toward Trafalgar Square. And that little kick up there as well slows things right on down. So, and then right after that, they head over to the mall and then back over to the back end of the of the left-hand turn away from downtown London. I think up front, it's a lot of little punchy sections that just slow down the pack. And the second half, I think, is very flat. And then you hit into this climb. And this is really where you can actually pick up a lot of time and speed, I think, because the climb isn't very long. And I think a lot of riders look forward to this to say, okay, Zach Herod, 7 watts per kilogram, keep the speed as high as you possibly can. And you don't have as many little punches that come at you that keep the speed lower. So it's interesting, but I do think that the splits do go a little bit shorter, actually, on the second half, as we consistently see at that 16K mark. Now look at the time here, though, Kate. 19 seconds between X and Plastic Cockneys.
There you go. I mean, Team X, they had to have a good one to even be in it from a numbers game, even though we do think, we'll hark back to it, mathematically not that possible. But still pretty good to see them having such a solid ride. So they have extended that lead. It was only 12 seconds after 8K. It's now out to 19 seconds. So they are really winding it up and having a good day. I've loved, Nathan, that in the last race of the season, so many teams have turned up and thrown it down. They've really had a kind of season-defining performance amongst them. How good is that for the camaraderie? And overall, the other thing I think it shows is a great deal of respect for the league itself. And WTRL have done an incredible job of putting this on and tweaking it a bit between season 1 and 2. I think this 8 normal race series within this before they go to playoffs is a really good balance between points races and teams time trials as well. And I think that we're actually seeing a slightly higher quality final week than we did in season one. So big kudos to the athletes for bringing it.
Bringing in a little bit of a in real life view here, Lucas Versluis, the Dr. Weebles, as he's called over on Twitch, actually, hammering away right now. Going to be starting taking these. They're going to actually. Do you see how he pulled through as they went right on by the DZR, Danish Zwift Riders team, actually, as he's leading out Team Experimental from this little point of view. As we do see Kim Little saying thanks in the right hand side of the screen. We'll see if we can get a full view here of Lucas's Twitch, well-known Twitch streamer. He's actually the top Twitch stream currently for Zwift over on the platform. 192 beats per minute. The suffering there, as you can see in the face. Zach Harrod now making his way to the front 5.8. As you can see, Kim coming on through. I think Lucas here looking to get back to the back of the pack here now, as he's just done taking his pole, as Zach pulled on through. Podsy there on the front there, Michael Podzaline. Look at the reds here. A little bit of kicks he has to do over and over again to grab back on, and then the rest and to sit in here. We're trying to bring that heart rate back down up into the 191s here for Lucas.
Yeah, there's not a lot of heart rate dropping that's going to happen between here and the finish there in that final 10K. It's good to look at this graph because it really highlights what we talk about, the on-again, off-again nature of a team's time trial. It isn't just this solid hold one pace, hold one power, keep going all day. It really is effort, recovery, and I also love when you watch the Twitch streams. It's a little bit voyeuristic, isn't it? You get to see inside their pain cave and see the grimace on the face. So when he was pulling the big turn at the front there, his face in an appropriate way, I would say, for that effort, but he looks to have settled down a little bit more comfortable now, getting a bit of recovery at the back.
Look at the difference in the heart rate there, going from 191 all the way down to 180 here at this point. Everything we're about to have a big jump in that, though, in just a moment, as they do catch a Team Italy rider. Now, I mean, I want to have a little bit of comparison here, too, on the side-by-side. I mean, we take a look at this and we go, okay, 180 beats per minute, that's what it looks like. But then when you get into the live view here at this rider, right, so the difference here between what you see in the pack and what you see from this live perspective here really gives you an idea of how much tactic, how much this rider is thinking about where his position is going to be, how he's going to take his power into this next section of the course as we watch him take on. I have a feeling he's about to ramp up a lot here in just a moment, maybe even a shift down, shift up here, right up and out of the saddle here into those orange numbers in order to hang on. 500, 600 watts here now at this point here. And you do see the heart rate coming right on up to 185. I have a feeling it's going to be close to that 190s again. And then it's just going to be hang on as Zach Harrod now takes over at the front. We'll take a look at what that looks like as Harrod looks to ramp things up for the riders here. And then it looks like Lucas is going to hang on the back here as Zach on the right-hand side goes to try and ramp that speed up for the pack and get it back up to speed as quickly as possible, which is a very important tactic to gain seconds, actually, when it comes to very sharp gradients like that. Getting over the top of them as quickly as possible and getting right back up to speed. That's really how you get the best time out of a team time trial for the whole pack. That's always my biggest goal, actually, at those sections of the course.
Yeah, you don't want any heroes who go up those kind of steep sections without considering what the rest of the team is doing, because you can unwittingly break a lot of legs and actually open up a significant gap in a really short amount of time if you're not quite conscious about how to do it. So it is good, I think, again, when you have good team direction to remind everybody that it's coming up, this is what you need to do. Even as prescriptive as change your gear out of your seat, take the thought out of it, and as we keep saying, the emotion out of it, because that can make a real difference. This final 8 kilometers is quite critical. We've seen teams gain and lose an awful lot in this final quarter of the race, and so this is where they need to come out of that underground, establish that speed again, and just settle in for what is a big run into the finish.
Let me see if we can bring some splits up here. It does look like Bike Strong KTM continue to be on a little bit of a run out here today. And this is kind of I think a little bit of an upset with how good of a ride that they're having. Team Experimental, though, they were 20 seconds up. It's going to be hard to lose that, I think, on the day. And, man, it feels like to me for Team Experimental, and we are staying on them for a while, but I think that this is one of the stories of season 2 and be on the watch out for season 3 because I just get the feeling that they didn't come in with exactly the organization or the fitness that they wanted. That it was kind of a ramp up into the new year. It started, the season did start only the second week into the new year. Some of these riders perhaps just getting back into their Zwifting, getting ready for maybe an in real life season here. And I have a feeling that because of that, maybe we're a little bit on the back foot because this is kind of a walk away ride a little bit here from Team Experimental, showing their kind of their old school domination that they used to have. From Team Tour 2K Callus here now as they come on through. They were at a 2029, so a full 30 seconds behind at that last split. We'll see how the next splits come on through here. But, I can't say it enough here. I think watch out season 3, West Side, Team Experimental. If they stay committed, could be one of the top teams coming on in and looking for that Premier Division again. Well, I would say again because being at that level again, they were at that level in the old school esports before Zwift Racing League, a part of the in real life arena events that were going on a lot. They were one of the main teams represented at those.
Oh, I love the idea of arena events. Maybe in our post-COVID world, we can look forward to that again. Wouldn't that be a good one? It's interesting to consider the seasons that they are coming out of winter, so coming into summer, likely a little bit more form.
Team Italy now 30-41 as they come through. And yeah, I have a feeling that maybe a little bit more form will be coming through. And you might see a big switch up actually for the riders out here. Those that do have a a focus both with in real life racing right next to their esports racing as well. So you might see a big change in how teams are performing specifically because of the ramp up in how they are treating each part of the season. I do know on the women's side in the Premier Division, there are definitely riders that are part of pro teams that are training up for specific events that it does impact their ability to race on the esports side of things. They're out there doing big base rides or they're doing certain kinds of rides to get ready for the season where it's not necessarily a time where they need to be focused on a lot of intensity. They can really try and sharpen that section of their fitness too much and get dull actually because of it, because they're not putting in those big base miles. So a lot of riders perhaps in that kind of a situation where they need to focus both. And then you do have teams, though, obviously out there that are completely focused, like Canyon Esports and others that are out there that are nothing but esports teams, and you see them benefiting from that, dominating. Hino being another one, obviously, in the Premier Division, fully committed to the esports world and not as concerned at all about what's happening with the in real life racing.
And it's another curious one is that you can actually race yourself into unfitness because when you do start doing a lot more intensity and a lot more racing, you do tend to lose that underlying kind of base fitness. And there is a point in your season where you need to dial that back and you need to get a few more kind of base Ks in and build that foundation for what your house of fitness is kind of built upon. When there is a 5-week gap between seasons, the question becomes, what are the riders doing in that 5-week gap? Are they actually taking a bit of downtime and a bit of a break? Or are they actually just going back and getting some big Ks in to underpin the fitness that they will need going forward? But it is a real consideration. If you look at any of the in real life racing, and it should be applied to the esports world as well, you can't have a really long season, a 26 or 30 week season, or even longer that the World Tour riders have for both the men and the women, and expect riders to be on form throughout that entire period. And so we will see some teams kind of rise and fall in terms of periodization and what they are prioritizing. But certainly it's a bit of a different pattern we're seeing in the EMEA versus what we're seeing in APAC, where the APAC riders are coming out of their summer and a lot of that in real life racing that they've been peaking for, they will now be taking a bit of a break, whereas I think these guys are just ramping up their season.
Plastic Hockey's here. They're just demolishing each other. It looks like their team members are actually just taking right and left hooks on each other over and over again, because when you get down to 4 riders like this, if it's a 30-second pull each, right, that means that you're only going to be getting somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds between pulls that you have to take. That is not, that's that's not a lot of rest
Not a lot of
at
recovery.
all. No, you don't hardly get
No.
anything at all. And it looks like they started with 6 on the day actually because Hart is off the back here pedaling in, and we do see another rider. This is going to be. Let's go ahead and bring in who we're watching actually here at the top. It's gonna be Titch here at the back, who has dropped off as well. So they started with 6, but it looks like it was just full gas, most likely dropping through the hills, Surrey Hills, and they were going to just come to the line with 4, but with only 4 and probably 4 poles left to go, maybe 5 before, when they did drop those riders off, maybe just a couple too many poles left to take to really keep things consistently, solidly at the right speeds, because we do see them breaking apart often. I have a feeling they're going to have to really rely on the stronger riders here that have anything left in the tank to keep the pace high. But eventually that number just ends up coming down. You can't hold 7 watts per kilogram forever.
No, it's a little for what we expect from them. It's a little bit of a dog's breakfast, but there can be a number of factors behind that, and sometimes you can go into a bit of a death spiral in a TTT when it starts coming a bit undone. A few legs start cracking, and then there's no real way to undo the damage that you have done. They're still performing really well. So, I mean, if we do look at those splits, you could get, by looking at them on screen, you could think that they're performing quite differently to what we're seeing in terms of results. But isn't it a very different visual with the Team Tour 2000 Kalash here, who look pretty neat, actually? They look like they're working really well as one cohesive unit, even if we've got a couple of riders sitting back versus a smaller number of them who look to be taking most of the weight in terms of rolling those turns at the front. They're certainly looking very different out on board, and I'd suggest that the communication coming through from the team managers might be a little bit different in tone.
And having the 6 riders here, this will be the difference between that 9 seconds. There's an opportunity here for Tour 2000 Callis here at this point to take over that second place spot for sure. Mainly because they have these extra riders. There is a little bit more space for the other riders to rest up and pull through at a very high wattage. Now, the question is whether or not they have the manpower, whether or not they have the talent really at this point, whether or not they have the fitness at this point, because they have the opportunity when it comes to how many riders are here. The question just comes down to, is there anything left in the tank, or are Plastic Cockneys just the stronger team when it comes to 4 riders? With 6 riders, it should be there. The opportunity should be there. They need to take full advantage of it, and they need to really actually shorten up the poles at this point to maybe even 10 or 15 seconds full gas at the front. Don't open up any gaps, but just make sure you keep that speed as high as possible, because there are 9 seconds on the course right now to take away from Plastic Cockneys, who are going to be fading with only 4 riders.
Yeah, this is a real opportunity for them, isn't it? You're right. If they shorten up those turns a little bit and just a little bit more speed, we're not talking about a huge difference here, but from the get-go, we know that final 8 kilometres can really, really bite, and you can end up losing quite a lot of time if you're not kept all together. So that is the opportunity for Team Kalash. The Plastic Cockneys faltering a little bit, which we don't see often. Over to the live stream here on the Twitch. These are the final meters, and he's absolutely throwing the
He's going to be the last rider. Yeah.
Heart rate.
There was actually 6 left for Team Experimental there, and he did everything he could to the line. It's a little bit of a show. I think he knows he's live with us here, so good on Lucas. Look at just
And
over the handlebars, absolutely done. 4.9 watt, 377 watt average. I mean, whew. Good job to Dr. Weeble / Lucas. Always great to see him out there hammering. Now, as we do see, this is going to be the BRT team, Bolt Racing team, making their way to the line. Better's going to get dropped off, but we were talking about Tour 2K Callis. This is the team that's got the opportunity at this point to try and bring something back on the day. We'll have to look at the results at the end here. With these orange numbers here, 9 seconds is a lot. Cockneys there, as you can see, 33 seconds back from them, though, at this point. That is telling me that Tour 2K have brought that time back and maybe taken over the second place on the podium for the day. Plastic Cockneys, they showed up, solid effort here, and they will be taking down the series overall, regardless of the result here. But I have a feeling they may have faded to the line. 4 riders left to go, and I have a feeling Tour 2K pulled this off. We'll have to wait for the results, though.
Well, hasn't that been a bit of a show up for the day, that we keep seeing these teams that are third or fourth overall on the table have been really stepping up and performing as though they are on the top of the table, making sure that they finish that season out. Plastic Cockneys pushing all the way to the line. I'm not sure that it'll be enough to even hang on to that second today. They did get a little bit messy in the middle there, but they have had a sensational season, and they just need to regroup a bit now for the playoffs because we don't want to see any messiness happening in that TTT coming up on the weekend. So there's their opportunity to regroup a little bit from this and see what they can pull out on the weekend. Cryogen, they're down to 4 as well, coming into these final couple of kilometres. This big roundabout, of course, an iconic one, but they need to just keep that pace going toward the finish. We're looking at the C now with Cryogen here. So there's the splits so far on the left. And again, a really similar pattern with this final 8 kilometres is really biting.
Yeah, I believe this is going to be, if we look through the Cryogen, no, the Cryogen, huge team. So a lot of times there are so many teams within a single division from one team. But I have a feeling we're looking at what is that? Doi? It's, okay, help me out. I totally messed that. That's actually going to be a climb that I've never even heard of. Have you ever heard of this? Doi Intanon. Do you know this climb?
Doi Intanon. Look, I don't, but if you ask me again in about 30 seconds,
Martin.
I'm hot on Dr. Google over here.
Martin's going to help us out here. Doi, it's got, I think, okay, so Middle East or Spanish?
No, it is in Thailand. If I rode my bike as fast as I could, I could once again be world champion. Now, it is 2,565 meter climb in Chiang Mai in Thailand. So there you go. Somebody has been well traveled and explored a few different climbs in order to put that one in.
They've done their homework, that's for sure. They've definitely done their homework to try and find every single climb. You know, Cryogen, I think, is such a large team at this point, and they're naming themselves after so many different climbs that they were just like, we got to find every climb that's left on planet Earth in order to have anything left. But currently sitting 7th place here. They got a 3-second gap, actually, to the TBR, the Big Ring 44T, actually. So there's a battle for 6th place here at this point. The Really Rhinos there, 36-20. KRTC Love Guns also. This is all pretty close between this.
Seriously, who makes up these names? And BRT C-sectioned sitting at the top. I feel like in the C's we've got.
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding to the name?
His name is C-section. BRT C-section with the domination. They're cutting through the competition right now, making an early arrival to the line. I mean.
Well, I feel like you've been building up to those, but that was just off the cuff, Nathan. You're on fire today.
We've got a little bit of experience. We never had one. We actually never made it early to the line, but everything.
You gave it 5 shots, so
we gave it. Yeah. Oh gosh. All right. Now moving on. Moving Cryogen. Looks like they've dropped off a rider or two here now, and back in with TFC. Thor. Just for glory, there we go. 8th place currently with the 36-31. Again, very tight racing here in the C category. Absolutely loving how close this is. C section, you really are walking away a little bit, though, as they almost have 20 seconds over Sock Schwartz. What's up, Doc? But between 3rd to 8th, this is anybody's race, really, still.
Well, thought there is no Chris Hemsworth looking avatars amongst them that I can see, but a good name. And they have been fairly consistent splits, actually, across the board. So they're doing a pretty good job. Still 5 of them coming in towards the finish and keeping it all together with a decent high speed. Based on some of the fireworks that we've seen across the board today, I think it's a pretty big result to even come in looking quite neat with all of your riders. It certainly hasn't happened to every team. So we'll give them a shout out for that.
I am seeing some questions coming on through for some great for some of the splits that are coming across for W2. We can bring in the splits for W2. We will not have images for W2, but we'll be able to bring in some splits for them in just a little bit here. I know that some people are looking for those. I do see Carissa. Shout out to Carissa Min. as always. She definitely needs to calm down as she brings in her Carissa calm down emote over on Twitch. She was streaming her race. I'm loving to see the support that she's showing to one of the actually biggest supporters of women's racing out on Zwift for the longest time. One of the admins across the board for a lot of the different Facebook groups and a big leader amongst that. So great job to Carissa getting out there and showing off the effort that she put out also for the TFC team. Says that they actually took down third overall in the series, actually. So awesome to see. And thanks for throwing down the stream. We're also seeing Martin, Jespin, I am seeing your comments coming on through for the W2. Appreciate that. I am seeing that Kim Little was typing in the middle of his race as well over on over on the and at 400 watts. Robert Baldy's asking how he's able to do this at 400 watts. And that's got to be a big question coming across everybody's mind, actually. But have you ever seen Kim's setup, though? It's a full-on esports setup, that's for sure. So I think that has something to do with it.
I would love when they bring in voice to text on Zwift Companion, because I think that could make it quite interesting. Because I reckon Zwift typos are a real thing. Sometimes you have to decipher a little bit what the intended text may have been versus what your sweaty fingers manage to type out. But you're right. I think with a good esports setup, it certainly aids that a little bit. But I mean, you're getting really serious when you start getting a special button for the power ups, and you're getting everything dialed so much. But it's a bit of an addiction, right, Nathan? Like, you start with a trainer and a simple fan from the hardware store, and well, from there it can really get quite full on the different setups people have going.
Yeah, it definitely can. You even got to the point now where we have riders actually creating buttons that are like your shifters. So essentially, in the same way that you would shift or hit the brakes, your power upper is able to be used specifically through an on handlebar button, which is really the way to go, I think, in order to get the quickest reactions. I mean, trying to reach for a keyboard, it can be very, very difficult when you're in the middle of a full-on sprint, especially with the timing of it, because some of these sprints, they open up so incredibly early. This sprint specifically, if you're in a points race or a scratch race, this one can be really difficult because it starts ramping up to about 8 watts, 9 watts per kilogram in the men's A's at about 500 meters, and then just goes up from there because it's kind of a sprint of attrition. So with this uphill gradient, and having the ability to just hit the button on the handlebars at that 300 or 200 meter mark is really where the winning move is, and not having that accessible immediately, somebody actually would have a huge advantage in a sprint situation without having to take a little bit of focus off and be able to put every single bit of power down with just a button that's on the handlebars. So I think that there is a
I was
future
trying.
for. Go ahead.
Well, for that kind of tech, right? I was trying to explain the power up and the use of all of that to my father, who's in his 70s, and he's an old school cyclist. And the only way that I could explain it to him that really got his understanding was saying it's like sprinting on STI levers versus down tube shifters. Like, if you actually have to take your hand off the bars to get to that down tube shifter to change, then that can make all the difference. But I actually feel like half of this field probably doesn't even remember down tube shifters. So that's quite a generational shift, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a couple of old school steel bikes actually that had the down
They're
tubes on them.
beautiful bikes.
And I showed up to I had a Peugeot that I showed up to the local group ride with, and people were like in awe of it, and I was like, I was just using it because it was a training bike. Like, I didn't even know what I was riding. Like, people were like, oh my goodness, and it had like the old school Dura Ace, like original, like it had all the original on it. They were like in awe of this thing, and I was like, I'm slow, you guys. I don't even, like, what are you talking about? I was pretty new to cycling still at this point, actually. It's early 2000s, and somebody was literally drooling over my bike that I felt like was falling apart underneath me, and I could barely hang on to it. The group.
Well, look, the first bike I ever saved up for worked in a print and copy store when I was growing up. To save up for my first bike was a Peugeot as well. So it was a bit of a classic. Didn't last too long as I upgraded. It was like right at the time where then carbon bikes came in, so I upgraded pretty quickly. But that was a beauty for sure.
TFC Wolverine. We can see somebody quickly jumped on that and upgraded that bike, or so and then sold it, I think, or something along those lines. It was like a family passed around bike, but TFC Wolverine here now 40-40-04. We do see her. This is a close. It amazes me how close this D category is as well. I mean, this is usually you see a little bit more disparity between, but this is they are fighting right to the line in this D category. Very cool to see. As far as the standings go in this div, in this D category, I think the Wolverines, they've got a little bit on the line here, actually, as they are sitting at 118 up against Zwift Scotland D1. Where's Zwift Scotland D1 standing? I mean, not going to be able to take them in the overalls here, I don't think, as there is a little bit of a difference between them here at this point in the point differentiation. But this is a big ride for the Wolverines if they're able to take this down, because they're currently sitting in third overall in the series at 118. Team NL, Netherlands, are going to walk away with this overall in the points race. Now, this really is interesting. They're going to maybe take last place on the day for the TTT, but they were dominating, I think, because they may be really good sprinters, which might go to show that sprinting amongst the some of these categories is a bigger payoff than just a pure FTP.
Yeah, it's certainly different style riders, aren't they? And if they're going really well overall, then they can kind of afford to turn up and not slaughter themselves in an event that if they're sprinters, likely they're not huge fans of, because these aren't that fun. I mean, there's a certain fun in it when it all goes to plan, but when it doesn't go to plan, it is messy and it is painful. And even from the Twitch channels that we've seen, we know that there's certainly a lot of lactic acid in their legs and probably in their eyeballs by this point of the race, to be honest. So if they don't have to push it too hard because they are doing well overall and they will move up a category anyway, I think that it can be a bit fun for them and they can finish out the season without it being too stressful.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of a take the champagne across the line ride, perhaps, for the team.
Yeah, a bit of a
maybe
promenade.
they might be yelling at us like that. Did not feel anything like what you're talking about at all.
Yeah.
Kate and Nathan, we were dying out there. Team CLS now coming across the line, 150, 185 from the herd. They're definitely not chilling out one bit right now. Coming across the line, solid ride here coming from the herd team. TFC with Murray, Moulton, as you can see, Peyton is there. Great to see. I believe that's going to be Jim Peyton, if I'm not incorrect. All long time viewer and coming out of the USA, 158 beats per minute. Thomas here leading him out. Moulton as well. Forward of the line for TFC. And that is is this going to be the Wolverines? Is that right? I think that's going to be the Wolverines hammering away. And see if they show their claws here with the track. It looks like, is that the Madone? Murray to the front. Now he slows him on down. Murray got to go all the way to the line. There he goes.
You've saved your best material for the back end here, Nathan. I feel like you've had a few of them saved up. Definitely. Zwift Scotland here, that as they come toward the line, they've still got 5 by the looks, which is good. Better than 4, definitely. As Anna Russell would say, looks like we've got a bit of a Santa afro going on here. I'm not sure why she thinks Santa has an afro, but alas, that seems to be her thing. That is a pretty cool head.
McGuigan. Did I get that right? McGuigan.
McGuigan.
I don't know.
McGuigan?
Come on. I've been watching Braveheart, okay? I think I know this is McGuigan.
Yeah, look, it's definitely McGuigan, but he might prefer McGugan, and he may not have heard that before, so he's likely a Brian too. I don't have his full name up, but I'm guessing he's a Brian McGuigan.
Oh, now Zwift Power is gonna this is it, Kate. This is the moment of truth. Gonna happen here. And we're looking at Barry.
Barry
McGuigan. Barry McGuigan is level 19 Zwifter, hammered away to the line. Here we go. Howison now with a little bit of a kick, and Scotland final little counts to the line here. This is the team you were talking about, maybe on their, as you were saying, uh,
Yeah, that we thought might be
parade
just
to the
cruising
line.
it in.
Veman
Yeah.
here
I
now.
mean,
Our Veman.
there's a Veinman has a pretty high heart rate for a cruise to the line. So,
Venman.
um,
Venman.
apologies, fellas, if we got the
175.
tactics a little
They're
bit wrong.
definitely like hammering themselves into the ground here right now. Like, no, you are so far off here. As 172, Vanderwall here, 162, 171. Not a single one of them. It's actually a mixed team here, it looks like, which is great
Yeah,
to
we've
see.
got a lady. That's fabulous. I love the mixed team, actually. That's something that came in season 2 that I hope we hold on to. I really like that. I also like that they're very well kitted out, despite Anna possibly having a small heart conniption looking at all this orange. It is very consistent with their national colours and national kit. In fact, it is very much, I think, their esports kit, because KNWU, that is their national federation. So, akin to Cycling USA or Oz Cycling. It's in Dutch. I won't attempt to try and say it, but the
Well,
K
really early
stands for
on,
the
we partnered
kingdom.
with them. We partnered with them for some streams super early on, actually, that they'd put together with some of their development squads and stuff, and they put together a little series, actually. So this is one of the early in-game kits, actually, which is really cool to see. There've been some updates since then, but one of the OGs for sure here. Cool to see them still involved here, especially at this D category level. Talk about long-standing, Kate.
Yeah, I like it. They've even got the Bio Racer little logo on there, who's made their national team kit for Yonks. So it's good, I think, overall, to see that they've got mixed team in the DCAT shows a fair commitment by their federation to this esports model. So that's exciting. And to be honest, I feel like they are a nation that at a premier level and a UCI esports level could really dominate, because they just have all the characteristics of who can perform exceptionally well in this style of racing. So that might be something that we're looking at into the future. So Nathan, let's take a look at those results when we can. And here is that, well, this is what we were looking at with Rachel Elliott pushing Socks for Watts onto the win here, 27 seconds ahead of Project Beast Mode. So massive ride for them and well earned. It won't be enough to get them into that playoffs. Turbo finishing in 5th, Cryogen Stelvio 3rd, Aeonian in 4th, and of course with Turbo in 5th, it will be business as usual heading into the playoffs on the weekend. BRT Atomic Kittens in 6th, the Bristol Flyers in 7th, the Polka Dot Bombs, Socks for Watts in 8th, Sisu I Race Like a Girl in 9th, and the RCC Women rounding out that top 10.
Looking at the B category, I want to just really quickly, though, it looks like it's a 1 point difference, as you said, Kate. I'm getting it needed to be a 5th place difference, 5 place difference, not a 4 place difference. So great call there, Kate. And wow, so close. Atomic Kittens and Turbo were just like fingers crossed, I think, on what was happening there with the kittens there. To try and make sure that they were able to hold on to that spot. A lot of dice to be rolled there. Belgian Zwift riders come on through in the B category for the women for 1st place with Socks for Watts, SBR Cake there in 2nd, SWW Bollinger in 3rd. It's going to be R3R Bewitched in 4th, Cryogen Roy Fur in 5th, the WTRL Watts up in 6th, RCC Women B in 7th, BVRT in 8th, CCI Racing Kalini in 9th, and Foods Ray Fine coming on through for 10th.
All right, let's look at the C division, the Aeonian Chicas. Well, they've taken the win today, not by a lot though. Zed Sunrays only 2 seconds adrift, so pretty good tight racing there. TFC Storm in 3rd, the Revo Galaxies in 4th, Socks for Watts, the Whatnots, that's a bit of a tongue twister, in 5th, Bella Vello in 6th, Hotter Than Hell, KRTC in 7th, the Herd of Cougar Chaos, it's rather descriptive, isn't it? In 8th, Fearsome in 9th, the Clapham Chisels rounding out that 10th.
And then in the D category, Revo Rebels come on through for 1st place. 1 minute up, actually. The Herd of Dolphins there in 2nd. There are WB Serrano Hams in 3rd. KV Gross in 4th. BRT Blazing Kittens in 5th. WTRL drafting Dinos UK 1 in 6th, Giant Camden, Spokes and Mirrors in 7th. CMA misbehaving. That's going to be one of your favorite teams, I think, out there, Kate, with 8th
Yeah, the
place there.
Cycling Mums Australia. I love them.
Yeah, and I'm loving the misbehaving in there. The Zwift Scotland WD19. It's going to be Cryogen Isrod coming on through for 10th place. And then we do have the results here. They're going to be updating slowly. I believe we'll have most of them through. I just did a quick little refresh, though. I said Team Experimental West Side, watch out for them in Season 3. Absolute domination. We've seen it over and over again. The consistency coming on through them in the second half of the season. They figured some things out. Can't wait to see what they pull off in Season 3. They will not be going through the playoffs in Season 2 here, but they take down the win and say, hey, watch out. This is really a stamp saying Season 3 may be theirs.
All right. Well, that was a good ride from them, wasn't it? And I like it when you're right, Nathan. They're a bit of a sentimental favourite for you. I'm sensing. So let's see what they can do next season. Team Tour 2, Kalash, they took second. The Cockneys in third. At the beginning, we were wondering where they were until their data showed up, but good on them for a bit of a consistent ride there in third. Team Italy 1 in fourth. Bike Strong KTM coming in fifth. SDW Vespide in 6th, the WTRL Skyrocket in 7th, BRT Hurricane in 8th, SZ Boulder in 9th, and DZR Dynamic Danes, the Danish Zwifting races there, they were in 10th.
In the B category for EMEA West 1, it will be WTRL Skyfall coming on through at 4 watts per kilogram, 41.57, 34 seconds back. It is Z Thundercats there, followed up by BRT Draft Beers. Then it is TMC Magneto, coming on through for 4th. On Your Bike, Z Sunshine there in 5th. After Party People in 6th. BRT Craft Beers in 7th. Very close racing there for 5th, 6th, and 7th place. They're only separated by 6 seconds. Their Innovation Alien Horde there in 8th. Sox Watts Aero AF there coming on through in 9th. And then DZR Road Rascals coming in for 10th at 157 back.
Yeah, we're definitely getting some funkier team names as we drop down these divisions here. We've got Division C, the RR Woolly Rhinos taking the win, 5 seconds clear of BRT C-sectioned. Socks for What's Up Doc in 3rd. KRT The Love Guns in 4th, as if that's not going to make you giggle. Just for Glory, they are 5th. The BRT Cheetahs in 6th. TFC Thor in 7th. The Big Ring 44 Tooth in 8th. They must be mountain bikers. That's not a particularly big ring, 44 Tooth. Cryogen Doi Infanon in Thailand, there we now know they are in 9th. And the Belgian Zwift Rider Rhinos, they took 10th today.
And last but not least, the TFC Wolverines. We saw them coming across the line there with their blades out at 51.30, and then it was the herd of Trick 40. They were up against there was a Magneto. I see a little bit of a theme going on here with
a bit of an X-Men kind of fans maybe
happening here. DC versus Marvel, I think, happening now. Herd of One Trick Ponies there coming in through for 4 seconds back. Swift Scotland D1 there in 3rd. Cryogen Hard Not Pass. Do you know where that is? Is that actually a thing?
I think it's in Scotland.
Is it? Oh, that would make sense.
I feel like it's in Scotland.
I get that sense too. Yeah. Huh. Heard of Slippery Seahorses there too, guys. Monty. They're coming on through for 6. Team NLD in their parade at 180 beats per minute. Fescate would put it there in 7th. And then the Dragons, the Draconis, coming on through in 8th, 2 minutes back. So that is the situation. Now, we do have an update as the current situation for those that will be coming on through for the playoffs. We will be having playoffs on Friday and Saturday of this week. Be on the watch out for the scheduled broadcast. Will be coming up here very quickly. Women, Z Thunderstruck made it through. Arrow 1 come on through from the APAC. Their Project Beast Mode and Turbo for the women. That's the 4 teams so far that have qualified. Project Beast Mode for APAC and DPAC Elite. Then it's BZR Sports Solid Red that just qualified with Fusion right behind them. GFTBE there for the East 2 from EMEA, and it's going to be two guys. Caramulo in, wow, that must have been a tight race because that team, I think, might have pulled that off today. If Martin might be able to give me an update on how that ended up playing out. But solid ride, I think, from two guys there pulling that off in the EMEA East 2. Plastic Cockneys come on through for West 1 as we just watched with Team Tor 2K Callison at Skylab and OVB in the West 2. That is how things played out. Those are all going through. We still have Americas, though, to play out later tonight, Kate. For the rest of two guys were joint first before race day. Got it. So it looks like two guys actually did not play that out today. But that's the situation, kids. We head into the playoffs.
Ooh, it's getting exciting, isn't it? I've loved this ordinary season of racing, if you want to call it that. And I'm looking forward to the playoffs that will happen. A few giggle moments tonight. Apologies to the Dutch team who we thought were processioning it in, who may, in fact, just not love Team Storm Trail. So, we're always going to have those. But Nathan, listen, I think that tonight was a bit surprising in terms of some of the teams who we didn't expect to take the win in the team's time trial. Not only taking the win, but quite convincingly so. I love the respect that they've given to the WTRL to turn up in the last week and race all the way to the line. And I actually think that that's a bit of a step up from what happened in season one, where a couple of the teams appeared to lack a bit of motivation toward the back end of the season. So that's awesome to see that community spirit coming through and support. So a big shout out to all the teams that have been involved, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of them for season 3.
Yeah, we will be seeing later tonight as far as the playoffs go. The all of the teams will be announced tonight, just so everybody knows. WTRL are working really hard. We've got the live data is doing really well for us. So tonight, if you want to know who's coming on through, we will have that live and exclusive here for the playoffs that are be happening this weekend. Still 8 teams to be decided, Kate. So actually, that's going to be on you and Dave. I'm actually just going to be hanging out in the background while you guys get to make the announcement. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, look, and it's been, I think that we've got some teams going through that we expected probably from week 1. We thought that that would happen, but we have had some surprises, and it really is not over. Today, it was very close between Sox for Watson Turbo, wasn't it? In the women, we nearly had a bit of an upset there. But again, I think just big congratulations to everybody involved for keeping us entertained, because it's important, right, for the commentators to be entertained, Nathan? I mean, between the fashion watch and whatnot, that's the name of the game. Not really, but good on them. So thank you very much to everybody involved. Nathan, you're awesome doing the production. So very big thumbs up to you. To Martin in the background, thank you very much for all the data that you feed through to us. That is absolutely invaluable. And to everybody watching, thank you so much for supporting Nathan and I's pronunciation of everybody's names. We too will evolve into season 3. So we'll go away and work on that. But please do tune in for the playoffs, because I think that that is going to be very exciting. Nathan, it is Friday and Saturday for this time zone. So Saturday and Sunday for anybody tuning in from Australia or New Zealand, but Friday, Saturday for the rest of you. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.